Throughout the day, our mind travels tirelessly. It runs, analyzes, compares, plans, remembers. A constant internal conversation repeats itself endlessly, like a river that never rests. And when night falls, when the body yearns for silence, and the soul whispers that it's time to let go, the mind often resists. It clings tightly to thoughts that spin again and again, like a wheel that can't find its resting place. This is where insomnia is born. Not just the kind of insomnia with open eyes, but also the kind of insomnia with a restless soul. Overthinking becomes an invisible prison, a gilded cage built by our own doubts, fears, expectations, and attachment. This audiobook was created as a refuge for those nights when the mind refuses to be silent. Here you will find a gentle but powerful guide to detachment, rest, and inner stillness through the deepest teachings of Buddhism. Beyond religious or philosophical doctrines, what you will hear throughout this journey is a sincere invitation to release the burden of excessive thoughts, to let go of the tension that resides in your head and heart, and to reconnect with that silent space within you, where peace is not a promise, but a direct experience. At the heart of Buddhism lies a subtle but transformative understanding of the human mind. Buddha did not teach how to acquire more thoughts, but how to free oneself from them. He did not propose a formula for being right, but a path to understanding that there is no need to hold on to so many ideas as shields. Every teaching, every story, every reflection you will hear here has been selected and adapted to help you cross the threshold of the day gently and enter the night like someone gliding down a warm, serene river. Anxiety and overthinking often emerge from the illusion of control. We want to have answers for everything. We want to anticipate every consequence, resolve every dilemma, secure every relationship, protect ourselves from every possible mistake. But the mind that tries to control everything tires, and in that fatigue, clarity is lost. Buddhism doesn't teach us to ignore reality, but to see it with fresh eyes, without judgment, without the weight of the past, without the pressure of defining the future. It invites us to inhabit the present moment, as if it were the only one that exists, because, in truth, it is. This audiobook is both a meditation and a teaching. You don't need to pay close attention. You aren't expected to memorize concepts or apply anything immediately. You can let the words simply accompany you as lie down, like a breeze caressing your thoughts. You can close your eyes and let each story or reflection enter your ears and dissolve within you, like incense that dissipates into the air without a trace. And if you ever fall asleep, you won't have lost anything. You will have gained rest, which is also wisdom. Sleep is not a waste of time, but a return to the essential. It is the moment in which the body lets go of the world and consciousness retreats to its source. But when we overthink, that return is interrupted. So, here and now, I invite you to allow yourself a sweet surrender, not to fight thoughts, but not to play along with them either. To watch them pass by like clouds in the sky, without clinging to any of them. The simplest, and perhaps most powerful, Buddhist teaching is that everything is impermanent, and that includes your anxiety, your fears, your thoughts. Buddha said that suffering arises from desire and attachment. Overthinking is a form of attachment to the outcome, to control, to external validation, to the need to understand everything. But when we learn to see thoughts as simple mental phenomena, without identifying with them, we begin to regain freedom. You don't need to stop thinking to sleep. You just need to stop identifying with every thought. And that's why you're here. Throughout this audiobook, I will guide you through stories that have spanned centuries, through reflections that have calmed monks and sages under the shade of trees, through teachings that don't ask for blind faith, but rather for loving attention. You will hear about the art of letting go, about self-compassion, about emptiness as a fertile space, about breathing as an anchor to the present. You will learn that your mind can be a garden or a labyrinth, and that the choice is not in controlling every thought, but in recognizing that you are not your thought. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a pond. When thoughts stir it, you can't see the bottom, but when you let it settle, everything becomes clear. You don't need to do anything. If you stop stirring it, that's what we'll do here. Night after night, return to silence without violence. Return to clarity without effort. Return to peace like one returning home. This isn't an audiobook to understand with your mind. It's an audiobook to feel with your heart. Let the words do their work slowly, like water unhurriedly, sculpting rock. There's no final goal you must reach. There's no state of enlightenment you must pursue before sleeping. Everything you need is already here. Your breath, your resting body, the present moment. Everything else can wait. If, in the middle of the night, you feel thoughts returning with a vengeance, remember one of the most tender teachings of Buddhism. Don't fight them. Invite them to sit with you, like guests in a home. Observe them, listen to them, and let them go. Overthinking loses its power when you stop resisting it and simply observe it. Mindful, gentle attention is the most profound antidote to anxiety. Throughout the following chapters, we will travel together along the paths of inner calm, through parables, sutras, and meditations that have accompanied millions of people for generations. You will be guided by teachings on emptiness, detachment, non-dualism, compassion, and radical acceptance of the present. You will hear about masters who found their deepest wisdom in silence, and about disciples who learned to release the mind like a leaf released in the wind. But this introduction is already part of the journey. Every word spoken here is an invitation to stop the wheel of compulsive thinking, to stop searching for more answers tonight, to stop investigating, resolving, or anticipating, to sleep not as an escape, but as a way to awaken to the deep consciousness that dwells within you. Perhaps, as you finish this first part, you'll find yourself breathing more slowly. Perhaps you feel something loose in your chest, that your shoulders feel lighter, that your eyelids begin to close without resistance. This is no coincidence. It's ancient wisdom at work. It's the beginning of a new habit, sleeping not from exhaustion, but from clarity. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing yourself this space. May you rest as deeply as these teachings have been transmitted tonight. And every night, you don't need to remember anything. Just listen. Just let go. Welcome to the beginning of a new kind of rest. A rest filled with wisdom. A rest without thoughts. A Buddhist rest. Chapter 1. The Garden of the Mind. When night spreads its soft blanket over the world, our body prepares to let go of the day and allow rest to envelop us. However, in the silence that precedes sleep, the mind often becomes a wild garden filled with tangled thoughts, memories, worries, plans. These thoughts germinate strongly because we have accustomed our attention to flowing aimlessly, letting it wander along paths of doubt and anticipation. In this first chapter, I invite you to explore the garden of your mind, to learn to recognize its hidden corners and gradually transform them into a space of calm and clarity. Beyond the literary image, your mind functions similarly to fertile soil. Every seed you plant, every idea you focus on, germinates and grows. When you repeatedly think about a problem, its roots sink deeper, and its branches multiply in the form of associated thoughts. The first step to stopping overthinking isn't to pull out the plants one by one, but to carefully observe the types of seeds we've been sowing. Worries about the future, untimely self-demands, judgments about what already happened. Recognizing this is filling the inner world with awareness, and awareness is the key that opens the door to transformation. Observation without judgment. In many Buddhist traditions, a practice called vipassana, or depth insight, is used to cultivate the ability to observe experience without identifying with it. It's not about judging or dismissing thoughts. It's about seeing them as passing clouds in the sky of the mind. When you identify an anxious thought, for example, what if I failed that presentation? You can recognize there's the doubt. That tiny pause of recognition, that split second when you say, this is a thought, creates an inner space that breaks automatic identification. That freedom, however small, is the beginning of a garden where we can choose the seeds more carefully. To practice non-judgmental observation, you can begin tonight, before bed, by spending a few minutes simply noticing thoughts as they arise. Find a comfortable position. Sit or lie down with your back straight, but relaxed. Let your inner gaze rest gently on the flow of your mind. You don't need to correct or analyze. Just notice. This is a worry thought. This is a memory. This is an anticipation. Each time you do this, you'll be creating corridors of calm in your mental garden. And the more you practice, the easier it will be to not get swept away by every thought. Breathing as an anchor. Observing the mind alone can be challenging at first, as the tangle of thoughts often holds us back. This is when breathing becomes a fundamental ally. Conscious breathing anchors us in the present moment and reminds us that we are more than mental activity. By simply paying attention to the flow of air in and out of your body, you are inviting the mind to a place of rest. In this initial exercise, place your right hand gently on your abdomen. Feel it rise and fall with each inhalation and exhalation. Don't change the rhythm. Just observe. As you inhale, I inhale. As you exhale, I exhale. That simple, one-term labeling is enough to focus your attention. With each breath cycle, you'll be able to more clearly detect any thought that enters your awareness. Observe the thought, and then return to your breath. It's as if you were using your breath to anchor a rope to the bottom of the mental pond, stabilizing its surface. Identify recurring patterns throughout the night. As you breathe and observe, you'll notice certain themes that recur frequently. They might be doubts about your job performance, concerns for the health of a loved one, thoughts about unfinished projects, or memories of past events. These recurring patterns show the areas where your mental garden tends to overflow. It's not about immediately resolving each issue. Often, the nightly analysis itself tends to repeat itself without finding new solutions, increasing anxiety. The goal here is simply to recognize patterns so as not to give them more nor than they deserve. By consciously illuminating these habitual paths of the mind, you reduce their power to drag you down. Self-compassion. Recognizing our habit of overthinking can sometimes generate feelings of guilt or self-criticism. Why can't I turn off my mind? However, Buddhism reminds us of the importance of self-compassion. Buddha taught that the human mind is conditioned by countless influences: daily stress, the nervous system, acquired habits. We are not bad for overthinking. We are simply beings who have learned certain patterns. So, every time you notice yourself criticizing yourself, stop that inner voice and approach that thought with kindness. Say, it's natural that my mind has traveled down that path. Acknowledge your own humanity, and then return to observation and breathe. That inner tenderness is the fertilizer that allows the garden to transform without forcing things. The power of inner silence. As you practice observing and breathing, you'll be able to experience moments of inner silence, brief spaces where no thought arises. These moments are like clearings in the forest, where the light gently penetrates. Don't try to prolong them. Allow them to be as long or as short as they arise. Each period of silence is a reminder that the essential nature of your mind is peaceful. In Buddhist practice, these moments are called nidra, or conscious rest. It's not deep sleep, but rather a state of wakefulness, unencumbered by the discursive flow of thought. Cultivating nidra is cultivating the ability to rest deeply, while the body remains alert. This quality of conscious rest is precisely what promotes restful sleep. and reduces the cycle of overthinking, taking the practice into the evening. So far, we've explored how to recognize thoughts, use breath as an anchor, identify patterns, and cultivate compassion and inner silence. Now, I'll guide you through carrying all of this into bedtime. Prepare the space. Make sure your room is dimly lit, at a comfortable temperature, and free from annoying noises. A quiet outdoor environment makes indoor work easier. Starting posture: sit in bed with your back against the headboard or wall, keeping your spine straight and relaxed. Bend or extend your legs, depending on your comfort. Start conscious breathing. Place your hand on your abdomen and observe your breathing for a few minutes, labeling inhale and exhale. Observe the thoughts without forcing it. Let the thoughts appear. Observe them as if they were passing visitors in a home. Welcome them and let them go. Recognize patterns. Notice which themes emerge most frequently. What do you repeat over and over again? Apply internal compassion. When criticism arises, respond gently. It's understandable that my mind does this. Rest in silence. Remain open to the brief spaces without thoughts. Don't try to prolong them. Simply observe them. Allow sleep. When you feel your body and mind begin to relax deeply, give in to rest. You may fall asleep in the middle of the practice. That's perfectly desirable. Closing the chapter. This first chapter has been an introduction to the art of observing the mind, anchoring it in the breath, and cultivating compassion and inner silence. It's not a magical technique that eliminates thoughts in a flash, but rather a gradual path to transforming your relationship with them. Each night you repeat this practice, you will be watering the garden of your mind with attention and kindness, allowing the unnecessary to wither and the essential to flourish. In the next chapter, we'll delve into the Buddhist teaching of impermanence and how embracing it can free you from the trap of stubborn thoughts. You'll learn to see that everything changes, even your anxiety, and use that insight to let go of attachment to the outcome. Until then, practice with patience and tenderness, remembering that true rest is born from loving attention in every moment. Chapter 2. The Flow of the Impermanent. When night falls and thoughts violently attempt to anchor themselves in our consciousness, the need to remember something essential emerges. Nothing remains unchanged. Impermanence, Vinicca in Pali, is one of the fundamental teachings Buddhism. Understanding it not as an abstract concept, but as a living experience in everyday life, can profoundly transform our relationship with overthinking and anxiety. In this second chapter, we will explore how embracing impermanence dissolves attachment to thoughts, frees the heart from expectations, and creates the intimate space where sleep arises without resistance. The Buddhist view of impermanence. Buddha taught more than 2,500 years ago that the root of suffering lies in our clinging to what we perceive as stable objects, experiences, relationships, and, above all, thoughts. When we believe something will last forever, we create a rigid expectation that life cannot sustain. And when reality shows its ever-changing face, we hold on even tighter, fearing loss. Impermanence manifests itself in tangible ways: the pulse of our breath, the beating of our heart, the cycle of the seasons, the growth and decay of all living forms. Yet, in our minds, thoughts often seem solid and permanent. Once an anxious thought appears, it seems as if it will never fade away. We convince ourselves that it will return again and again with the same force. To dissolve this illusion, we need to recognize that our thoughts also flow ceaselessly, born and dying like waves in the ocean. A thought of worry about the future is not eternal. If we observe it carefully, we will discover that it changes form, fades, and gives way to another. This dance of arising and dissolving is impermanent. To remember it is to release the anchor that binds us to compulsive thinking. 3 levels of impermanence: external, bodily, and mental. We can understand impermanence on 3 complementary levels. External impermanence: everything around us, the room you sleep in, the objects you touch, the landscape outside your window is constantly changing. Every object ages. Every plant grows and withers. Every city totters with the passage of time. Recognizing external impermanence helps us accept the transience of external circumstances that cause worry. Bodily impermanence. Our body is a river of chemical and physical processes in constant flux. Cells regenerate, pulse rate varies, breathing quickens or slows, muscles tense and relax. Realizing that our body itself is impermanent creates an intimate connection with the changing nature of all living things. It reminds us that there is no fixed I behind thoughts. Our sense of identity is momentarily built on constantly changing processes. Mental impermanence. Thoughts, emotions, and perceptions arise and disappear without pause. When you learn to perceive them as passing phenomena, you stop identifying them with your essence. A thought of guilt, envy, or doubt no longer defines you. They are waves that break on the shore of consciousness and then return to the sea. Exploring these three levels simultaneously offers us a broad view of impermanence. External reality, body, and mind are intertwined in a flow that never stops. Guided exercise. Observing change. I invite you to do a simple exercise before bed to experience impermanence on these three levels. Find a comfortable position, either sitting or lying down, keeping your spine relaxed but erect. Close your eyes and add your attention to the following cycle. External imagine. An external scene. The night sky above your house. Visualize it in all its details. Now observe in your mind's eye how that image changes. The clouds move. The moonlight flickers behind them. The outlines of objects blur. Recognize that this mental image is also impermanent. Corporal. Shift your attention to your body. Notice the temperature of your skin, the pressure of the bed, the subtle movement of your breathing. Feel your abdomen rise and fall. Your shoulders rise and notice how these movements change. From moment to moment, your breathing slows, then deepens, then softens. Each inhalation is new. Each exhalation is different. Mental. Allow thoughts to arise without resistance. Don't try to stop them. Just observe them as a friendly spectator. Identify the nature of each thought. Is it an expectation, a memory, a judgment, a fantasy? And then observe how it dissolves or gives way to an. You'll notice that, like breathing, thoughts arise and disappear spontaneously. Repeat this internal cycle for several minutes, allowing the direct experience of impermanence to take root in your awareness. When you feel ready, allow your attention to shift from detailed observations and merge into open rest. Breathe gently and allow the night to embrace you. Radical detachment. Understanding impermanence leads to detachment, but not to a cold, passive distance. Buddhist detachment is radically compassionate. It involves loving without clinging. When you cling to a thought, I need to resolve this if I sleep, you create a bond that fuels overthinking. Instead, detachment allows you to hold each thought tenderly and then let it go. Radical detachment is cultivated through the practice of conscious surrender. Instead of fighting thoughts, you welcome them with openness and then deliberately let them go. It's an act of inner courage. You know the thought is fleeting, yet you observe it with respect without succumbing to its tyranny. You can use an anchoring phrase for this conscious surrender. This too shall pass. Mentally repeat these three words. This, referring to the thought that is present. Also to remind yourself that nothing is left out of the flow. Pass, to affirm the inevitability of change. Each time you use this phrase, you will be strengthening the path of detachment. Stories of impermanence. To delve deeper into the experience of impermanence, I now share two short Buddhist stories that have been passed down for centuries. The story of Water and the Cup. A novice monk, troubled by the idea of impermanence, came to his master and asked, "Master, how can I accept that everything changes without becoming distressed?" The master took an empty cup and placed it under a gentle stream of water. Then he said, "Observe how the water flows in and out without pause. If you try to retain it in the cup, you will soon find that the fissures drain it away. If you let it flow, the current will cleanse the cup and constantly fill it with new water." Such is life. Impermanence does not drain our being, but purifies it with continual renewal. Tibetan sand painting. In Tibetan monasteries, lamas devote entire days to creating intricate mandalas of colored sand. Each grain of sand is carefully placed, representing the entire galaxy. Upon completion, the monks view the work with reverence and then, in a symbolic and deeply liberating act, sweep it away with a soft brush. The sand disperses, reminding participants and laypeople that the most sublime beauty arises and disappears, and that detachment does not diminish wonder, but rather makes it more genuine. As you listen to these stories, allow the seed of impermanence to germinate within you, not just as additional knowledge, but as an experience that accompanies your breathing and your attention. Integrating impermanence into the night. Now, let's take the elements explored and bring them into the night ritual. Evocation of the anchoring phrase. Before going to bed, gently repeat, "This too shall pass," a few times. Feel the weight and lightness of each word. Meditation on the cup and water. Imagine the cup and the flow of water. Mentally observe how a thought enters the cup and then fills it. Then it overflows and dissipates in the continuing flow. Visualization of the mandala. Close your eyes and visualize a sand mandala taking shape in your mind. Enjoy its colors. Then, with a gentle gesture, watch the sand let go, dissolving into the air. Recognize that your thoughts are just as ephemeral. Breathing in surrender. Combine visualization with conscious breathing. As you inhale, imagine taking the sand of your thoughts. As you exhale, visualize the grains dispersing. As you exhale, let go of the thought. Open break. After these steps, allow your attention to unfold in a receptive silence. Don't seek forced rest. Let sleep come like a whisper. Final reflection. Impermanence isn't a depressing truth, but an invitation to freedom. When you understand that everything changes, including the thoughts that keep you awake, you can release the tension that prevents rest. The flow of life sustains you with every change, and every thought is a wave in that endless river. This second chapter has been a guide to embracing impermanence. From a Buddhist perspective, through practical exercises, ancient stories, and a nightly protocol. Rather than accumulating knowledge, the goal is for impermanence to become your natural ally, dissolving attachment and penetrating your direct experience. In the next chapter, we'll delve into the practice of body mindfulness, exploring how body scanning and sensory awareness can ground you in the present and stop the wheel of thought. Until then, practice "This too shall pass," and allow the night to teach you the art of detachment. Chapter 3. Mindfulness of the body. When the torrent of thoughts threatens to sweep us away once again, there is a simple and profound refuge in the present moment: our body. At the heart of Buddhist practice, mindfulness of the body, Kayanupasana, offers a firm anchor to sensory reality, a means to interrupt the cycle of the discursive mind and immerse ourselves in direct experience. Through body scanning and full sensory awareness, we can redirect our attention from the conceptual mind to physical sensations, rebuilding the relationship we have with each moment and allowing the body to reveal its innate wisdom. Most people spend much of their day disconnected from the signals their body sends. Modern culture rewards speed and productivity, and our attention becomes fragmented between screens, noise, and mental demands. The body, however, functions as a constant feedback system. Our heartbeat, skin temperature, muscle tension, and breathing rhythm, all of these data are valuable messages about our internal state. Learning to listen to them with mindfulness unlocks a dimension of wisdom we often ignore. Body scanning as a central practice. Body scanning is a classic mindfulness technique that involves methodically and non-judgmentally directing awareness to each part of the body. Although it may seem like a mechanical process, each step can become a gateway to inner. We begin by becoming aware of our posture. When we lie in bed with our back aligned, we feel the contact of our body against the mattress or sheet. We can notice the firmness or softness of the surface, the way gravity acts on each area. From there, the scan unfolds in an order that feels natural to us. From the soles of the feet, up the legs, trunk, shoulders, arms, neck, and head. At each point, we simply pause our attention for a few moments, observing without intervening. If, upon reaching the calf, we notice heat, cold, tingling, or tension, we don't try to change the sensation. We allow it to exist and observe it with curiosity. If a thought arises, pain, discomfort, work-related discomfort, we label it without getting caught up in it, sensation, and return to the body scan. This slow journey through the body creates a shift in attention. What was once a mental whirlwind becomes a flow of tenderly observed sensations. With each movement of awareness toward the body, we build a stable foundation that resists the waves of obsessive thinking. Full sensory awareness, beyond structured scanning. Mindfulness of the body includes engaging the senses more broadly. Sounds in the distance, the feel of clothing on the skin, the aftertaste in the mouth, the gentle brush of air against the nostrils as we breathe. Before sleeping, we can pause for a moment to notice the sensory environment around us. Without judging or comparing, we perceive sounds, the distant nightingale, the hum of a fan, the deep silence that springs up between the noises, touch, the feel of the sheets, the weight of the blanket, the temperature of the air on your arms and legs, smell, the subtle scent of the room, the olfactory memory of a relaxing tea, the neutrality of the night air, like a slight aftertaste that remains in the mouth, without the need for analysis or remembering what we ate. This exercise not only strengthens the connection with the body, but also retrains the attention to remain in the here and now. The mind seeks solutions, scenarios, answers. The senses offer a more immediate, less conceptual reality, and therefore less likely to trigger the cycle of worry. Anatomy of tension and conscious release. Often the anxious mind is reflected in unconscious muscular tensions. A furrowed brow, a clenched jaw, raised shoulders, a contracted pelvis. Recognizing these points of tension is in itself an act of liberation. As you scan your body, pay special attention to those areas where stiffness resides. When you identify tension in a muscle or joint, accompany it with gentle, prolonged breathing. As you inhale, imagine yourself drawing air into that area. As you exhale, allow the tension to subside slightly. There's no need to force a physical stretch. The simple act of conscious breathing can induce a micro-reduction in tension. By practicing this night after night, you develop the ability to consciously release accumulated layers of rigidity. Over time, your body learns to automatically release tension when you rest, and your mind less frequently notices the urge to cling to worrying thought. Posture as an internal mirror. Although many mindfulness practices are done lying down, we can also take advantage of the time before sleep to observe our sitting or standing posture. Before going to bed, sit on the edge of the bed or stand with the feet firmly on the floor. Notice how you distribute your weight, how your spine lengthens, and how your pelvis and shoulders align. Posture reveals our internal state. A forward curved back can reflect a depressed or tired mood. A tense neck indicates an overexcited mind. By becoming aware of this, we offer the body the opportunity to readjust. Gently straighten your spine, open your chest, and relax your jaw. This act of physical kindness transmits to the mind as a message of safety. Integrating scanning with breathing. To deepen your practice, combine body scanning with slow, rhythmic breathing. For example, inhale while mentally counting 4 times. Hold your breath for a moment. Exhale, counting 6 times. After exhaling, hold for another 2 counts before inhaling again. This 4-1-6-2 rhythm gently lengthens the exhalation, promoting relaxation. As you maintain this pattern, direct your attention to each area of the body in the scan. You breathe into the lower back, the chest, the ribs, the base of the skull. With each inhalation, you renew your presence. With each exhalation, you dismantle layers of tension. In formal practice, the body in daily life, paying attention to your body isn't just something you do at bedtime. Every time you wash your hands, take a break from work, or get up from your chair, you can use those moments as mini scans. Notice the touch of water on your skin, the movement of your joints as you turn, the sway of your breathing. These flashes of awareness break up the habit of mind wandering and integrate it into your daily routine. With these small reminders, mindfulness of the body ceases to be an isolated routine and becomes a way of being. The difference between one day and the next is no longer in how many tasks you completed, but in how many times you return to the body. To remember that the present is a gift. Inner voices and sensations. Few practices confront the mental voice as directly as paying attention to bodily sensations. When an urgent thought erupts, it often brings with it a series of sensations. Palpitations, a lump in the throat, sweaty sweat. The natural bridge between mind and body is precisely this sensory manifestation. Instead of ignoring the internal alarm, stop and ask yourself, where do I feel this in my body? You may discover pressure in your chest or tingling in your arms. This exploration, without drama or aversion, is an act of compassion. You acknowledge the alarm signal, but you don't let it drag you down. You stay with the sensation, letting go of the stories your mind creates. The wisdom of the body. In Buddhist tradition, it is said that the body has its own wisdom, known as Kaya Vipassana. It's not a conceptual intelligence, but an innate ability to respond to the present with wisdom. When we learn to tune into that wisdom, we stop relying exclusively on the thinking mind and begin to trust the clarity that arises from sensory experience itself. For example, our breathing can be modulated without prolonged conscious effort. The body reestablishes a balanced rhythm. When we give it the opportunity, our temperature adjusts, and our pulse slows when stress decreases. Observing these processes with mindful attention is recognizing that the body knows how to take care of itself. Taking the practice into the night. For bedtime, I suggest this protocol for mindfulness of the body. Lie down with your palms facing up and your arms slightly separated from your torso. Close your eyes and take 3 deep breaths. Start the body scan from head to toe, staying at least 20 seconds in each area. Combine scanning with the 4-1-6-2 breathing rhythm. If thoughts arise, return to the body without judging them. When you complete the journey, remain in receptive silence, allowing the sensations to flow without resistance. This ritual prepares the body and mind for a restful sleep, interrupting the chain of exhausting thoughts. Between each exhalation, you can notice the space before the next inhalation. Therein lies the seed of rest. As you internalize body mindfulness, you'll notice that your mind quiets more easily. The body is a firm anchor. As long as you remain in the present, the tendency to overthink loses its fog. Continue exploring the wisdom of the present moment through your body, letting each inhalation and exhalation bring you closer to inner silence. Chapter 4. The inner silence. Beyond thought. There is a space beyond words, beyond ideas and memories, beyond even thought itself. It is not a space that can be located on a map, nor is it a goal to be achieved through effort. Rather, it is a return, a silent return to the heart of our experience. In the Buddhist tradition, this space has been described as the original mind, Buddha nature, the silent presence that observes without intervening. For those who suffer from overthinking, this inner silence is not just a relief, it is a revelation. It is not the absence of thought, due to repression, but the presence of an awareness so vast that it needs to grasp at nothing. Throughout our lives, we have been trained to think, analyze, calculate, and foresee. These functions are useful, even necessary. But the problem arises when the mind, instead of being a tool, becomes a tyrant. Thoughts no longer obey the present, but invade it. They anxiously anticipate the future, or delve into the past with guilt. They push us to imagine possibilities, to resolve the unresolvable, to repeatedly replay the film of what could go wrong. Silence, on the other hand, requires no answers, and that is why, paradoxically, it is the place where many questions dissolve. Silence is not emptiness. It is presence. In our culture, silence is often confused with an uncomfortable void, something to be filled. In a conversation, when there is silence, we feel like something is missing. In a waiting room, silence makes us nervous. We fill the gaps with music, podcasts, TV shows, notifications. But the silence Buddhist teachings speak is not the absence of sound, but the absence of internal noise. In other words, a mind that has stopped interfering, a mind that has stopped labeling, judging, or persecuting. Imagine you're sitting beside a still, waveless lake. The water reflects the sky so clearly that you don't know whether you're looking up or down. In that reflection, there's no distortion, because there's no movement. That lake is your mind. When it's not disturbed by compulsive thinking, it hasn't ceased to exist. It hasn't shut down. It has simply returned to its natural state, pure, unfiltered awareness. Thought is echo. To understand overthinking, we can imagine it as an echo that repeats itself endlessly, an original sound, a worry, a memory, an idea, bounces off the walls of the mind and multiplies. Instead of letting it pass, we feed it. We analyze it, compare it, repeat it, as if listening to the echo more times gives us some control over the original sound. But in reality, what we're actually doing is amplifying it. Inner silence isn't achieved by fighting the echo, but by understanding that we are not that echo. We are the space in which it sounds. We are the open field in which thoughts appear and disappear, like call in the sky. And when this understanding becomes real, thoughts lose their power. They still appear, but they no longer drag us down. Listen to the silence. A simple but powerful practice is listening to silence. This isn't a metaphorical act, but a literal one. As you go to bed at night, or at any quiet moment, direct your attention to the space between sounds. If you hear the whir of a fan, notice the moment it ends, one revolution, and begins the next. If you hear a car in the distance, pay attention to the exact moment the sound fades. That interval, that threshold between sounds, is a door to inner silence. You can also pay attention to the silence between thoughts. Even though the mind seems incessant, there's always a pause between one thought and the next. However brief, train yourself to notice it. It's that small space that has the power to free you, because when you recognize that there's a moment when you're not thinking, even for milliseconds, you realize you don't need to think constantly to exist. The practice of observing without intervening. One of the central teachings of Zen Buddhism is sitting without doing anything. It sounds simple, but it's profoundly transformative. Sitting with your back straight, hands in your lap, eyes half open, simply breathing, without trying to control your breathing, without trying to calm your mind, just observing. Observing whatever arises, thoughts, emotions, sensations, as if you were the sky watching the clouds pass by. At first, it will seem like nothing is happening, or worse, that your mind is becoming more agitated. But over time, this passive observation becomes a form of rest. You don't need to stop the flow of thoughts. You just need to stop following them. The mind may continue to move, but you are no longer moving with it. You are somewhere else, deeper, calmer. You are in silence as medicine for the night. One of the times we suffer most from overthinking is when we go to sleep. The body is exhausted, but the mind keeps racing. It seems like when you turn off the light, all your worries come back on. The to-do list, the day's mistakes, the fears of tomorrow. In those moments, trying to reason or find solutions doesn't usually help. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. What the mind needs is space, not content. The practice of internal silence before sleeping can become a sacred act. You don't have to sit down and meditate, although you could. Just lie in bed and bring your attention to your breathing. Observe how the air flows in and out without controlling it. Listen to the sounds around you as if they were distant waves. Feel the weight of your body on the mattress. And when a thought arises, because it will, don't reject it. Just observe it, like observing a leaf blown by the wind. It comes and goes, and you remain. Don't seek silence. Allow it. One of the most subtle traps of the spiritual practitioner is to strive for silence as a goal. We make efforts to quiet the mind, to empty it, to reach the state of no thought. But that very effort is just another thought, another noise. Silence isn't achieved, it's allowed. It's not something you do, it's something you let be. And the harder you strive for it, the further it moves away. The key is to let go. Let go of the expectation of what the present moment should be like. Let go of the pressure to sleep well, to not think, to calm down. Let go of even the idea that you need to calm down. Inner silence arises when there is openness, not control. It's like sleep. You can't force it, only prepare the ground for it to occur. The same with silence. You can open the door, but you can't push it in. Silence and compassion. Often, compulsive thoughts aren't just mental clutter, but desperate attempts to protect ourselves. The mind replays scenarios because it wants to protect us from pain. It wants to anticipate problems so they don't surprise us. It wants to find solutions so we don't suffer. Behind overthinking, there's almost always a part of you that's afraid and trying to help you. And this is where compassion comes in. Instead of rejecting that part of you, listen to it tenderly. You don't need to obey it, but you can embrace it. You can mentally say, "Thank you for caring for me. Now you can rest." That fearful, agitated inner voice needs more love, not more judgment. Silence isn't indifference. It's a wordless embrace. The sound of now. Another path to silence is sound itself. In the Japanese Buddhist tradition, the ringing of a bell is a symbol of the present moment. When a bell rings, we are invited to stop, breathe, and be. You can practice this even without an actual bell. Use any sound. The beep of an appliance, the barking of a dog, the song of a bird. Every sound can be a reminder. Now, when you train your mind to be in the now, it doesn't need to think so much about the future. Thought becomes more functional, less obsessive. It doesn't disappear, but it's no longer the center of attention. It becomes a useful tool, like a flashlight you use when you need to see something, and then turn it off when you no longer need it. Silence is not isolation. Finally, it's important to understand that inner silence doesn't mean cutting ties with the world. On the contrary, it connects you more deeply. When your mind isn't occupied by its usual noise, you can truly listen to others. You can feel more intensely. You can savor life without rushing. Inner silence doesn't distance you from reality. It brings you back to it, undistorted. And so, by embracing silence, you discover it was always there. It's not something you achieve. It's something you rediscover, like a melody that was playing behind the noise, but you couldn't hear it. Now, with every breath, with every moment of stillness, that melody returns to you. You don't need to understand it. Just be with it. Chapter 5. The Open Heart. Cultivating Loving Compassion. Loving compassion. Love in Pali It is one of the most profound and transformative practices in Buddhism. While in the previous chapters we explored the mind, impermanence, the body, and silence, this chapter we will delve into the heart. We will learn to direct a warm, judgment-free energy toward ourselves and others, breaking the cycle of overthinking and connecting us to the truth that, ultimately, we all desire the same thing: to alleviate suffering and find peace. The foundation of loving compassion. From the moment we are born, we learn to distinguish ourselves from the outside world. I and you become divisions that structure our identity. This duality, useful for functioning socially, can fuel feelings of loneliness. I am alone with my thoughts. No one understands my anguish. Loving compassion dismantles this illusory boundary. It reminds us that we are not separate from others, that every being experiences joys and sorrows. When we cultivate love, we weave a bridge where the I recognizes the you as equally deserving of happiness. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is attachment, not only to material things, but also to the idea of an isolated self. By understanding that our own happiness is intertwined with that of all beings, we awaken a profound motivation to abandon the selfishness and meticulous attention to detail that characterizes overthinking. Loving compassion, then, is not a spiritual luxury. It is a direct remedy for the existential timidity that leads us to ruminate endlessly. The four metaphors of loving compassion. In the Pali Canon, the Buddha describes four attitudes that support love and offer us powerful metaphors. As a nurturing mother, maternal love cares unconditionally. When a mother protects her child from danger, she doesn't analyze merits or errors. She feels an immediate and lasting affection. Similarly, cultivating love, it involves wishing for the well-being of oneself and others, without judging. Like the sun that shines for all, the sun doesn't choose who to warm. Its light reaches all creatures equally. Our compassion should extend without favoritism, embracing friends and strangers, loved ones and those who may cause us displeasure. As a proud but detached father, a father rejoices in his son's achievements, feeling pride and joy. But he also understands that, as he grows up, his son will live his own life. Thus, love celebrates the well-being of others, without trying to control them. Like an immense ocean, the ocean receives endless rivers of water, and its vastness allows it to harbor life in all its forms. Our hearts, when filled with compassion, become so deep that they can contain human emotion without sinking into any. These metaphors offer us a poetic and practical guide to feeling love. This isn't about superficial positive thoughts, but rather a genuine openness of heart, based on a clear intention. May all beings be happy. Formal practice of love. Steps to cultivate unconditional love. To integrate this transformative energy, we propose a guided exercise that can be done before bed. Find a comfortable position, lying down or sitting with your back straight, hands resting gently. Close your eyes and take 3 slow, deep breaths. Then follow these steps. Focus the first sentence on yourself. Visualize your own face or feel your intimate presence and mentally say, "May I be happy? May I be free from harm? May I live with ease." Repeat each affirmation slowly, feeling each word sink into you. Direct love to a loved one. Imagine someone you care deeply about. A friend, a family member, a pet. As you visualize them, may name be happy. May name be free from harm. May name live with ease. Feel the warmth of your affection extending toward that person. Bring compassion to a neutral being. Remember someone who doesn't evoke strong emotions in you. An unknown neighbor, the cashier at the supermarket, and repeat the same phrases, sensing the expansion of your heart. Extends love to a difficult being. Herein lies the real challenge. Imagine someone with whom you have conflicts or disagreements. Open yourself to the possibility of wishing them well. May name be happy. May name be free from harm. May name live with. It's not about justifying painful behavior, but rather recognizing that, like you, that person seeks to avoid suffering. Open the circle to all beings. Finally, you encompass all existence. May all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings live with ease. Feel the beat of your heart, becoming a space that welcomes without limits. Each phase can last several minutes. Allow the words to connect with your breathing. If doubts arise, and I really wish this person well, pause for a moment and return to your breathing. The fact doesn't require perfection, but sincerity. Deepening compassion with breathing, while holding the phrases of love, incorporates a conscious breathing rhythm. Inhale for a count of 4. Exhale counting 6 times. By lengthening your exhalation, you facilitate relaxation and amplify the feeling of openness. With each inhalation, imagine taking in the energy of love and kindness. With each exhalation, project that energy toward the being you are contemplating. Overcoming internal obstacles. Cultivate love. It's not always easy. Strong resistance can arise. Blame, self-reproach. It's common to feel like you don't deserve compassion. If this happens, remind yourself that, as a human being, you have the right to the same care you see for others. Anger or resentment. When we express compassion to someone who has hurt us, we may experience irritation. Recognize this emotion as a natural protective emotion and continue reciting the phrases, allowing the warmth of the gradually dissolve the tension. Boredom or distraction. The mind may want to escape, thinking, this isn't working. In those moments, it returns with curiosity to the sensation in the chest, the rhythm of breathing, the weight of the body. Boredom is another way the mind protects itself from change. These obstacles don't invalidate the practice. They enrich it. Every time a barrier arises, we are learning something very valuable about the nature of our own resistance. Integration into everyday life. Beyond the formal evening exercise, love can be incorporated into daily activities. When washing your hands, every drop of water can be a reminder of inner purification. Wish well-being for yourself and the world with every move. When preparing dinner, invite loving compassion into your cooking. Imagine that each ingredient contributes to your own healing and that of those who will share your meal. In traffic or in line at the bank, take advantage of impatience to practice love towards yourself and towards others who are also waiting. These moments of love, they fragment the chain of self-protective thoughts and replace it with a rhythm of internal generosity. The healing power of self-compassion. At the root of many cycles of overthinking lies the critical inner voice. Reproaches, comparisons, demands. Without self-compassion, the practice of love, it remains lame. Therefore, before extending kindness outward, we must turn it toward our own hearts. Remember these original phrases. May I treat myself gently. May I acknowledge my suffering. May I give myself rest. Allow yourself to feel those words, like a balm that soothes your inner wounds. The more self-love you cultivate, the less your mind will need to resort to reproach to feel alive. Metaphor of fire in the garden. Imagine your mind as a garden filled with plants and weeds. Overthinking is the invasive weeds that grow vigorously, robbing the flowers of well-being, of light and nutrients. Loving compassion doesn't seek to violently uproot weeds that only leaves the soil wounded, but rather to nourish the garden, to add fertile soil, water carefully, and provide the right climate. Little by little, the flowers of calm and acceptance grow more robust. The weeds lose ground without us having to fight them directly. In the same way, the practice of love, it does not combat intrusive thoughts, but rather cultivates the soil of the heart so that more loving experiences emerge and create an inner environment less conducive to anxiety. Night ritual of loving compassion. To prepare your body and mind before sleeping, I propose this simple ritual. Dim light. Adjust the lighting so that the room is dim. Comfortable posture. Lie on your side or back with a warm blanket. Conscious breathing. 3 deep breaths. Initial self-pity. Take a minute or two to wish yourself rest and care. Maintain 4 directions. Short cycle of phrases towards yourself. A loved one, a neutral person, and a difficult person. Only 1 repetition per phase, allowing for expansion. Receptive silence. After finishing, keep listening internally, feeling the resonance of compassion in your chest. This simple protocol activates the relaxation response and sends a clear message to the brain. The world is okay. I can let go of vigilance. With practice, simply clasping your hands over your heart and remembering the phrases will induce the state of relaxation as love. Compassion as an antidote to isolation. Overthinking, by focusing on my mind, isolates us from the universe. Loving compassion reconnects us to the web of existence. Whenever we genuinely desire another's well-being, we feel invisible visas that bind us. Shared breath, circulating blood, shared joys and sorrow. This connection broadens our sense of identity, dissolving the feeling that we are alone in our own minds. By sleeping with an open heart, we recognize that we are not just resting our bodies. We are resting the human tissue that sustains. Opening the heart every night. Cultivate our love before going to sleep. It's actually an act of surrender. We surrender to the truth that we need care, compassion, and companionship, both from our own hearts and from all being. In doing so, we release the pull of the mind that insists on keeping us tense until our last waking breath. Let this practice become a beacon that lights up your nights, a gentle reminder that beyond the mental hustle and bustle, there's a space of love and care waiting for our return. Chapter 6. Conscious breathing, the bridge to calm. Every time you're alive, you inhale and exhale, yet you rarely notice this silent miracle. Breath accompanies every moment of your existence, nourishing your body and sustaining your mind, while also connecting you something deeper than any thought. When the torrent of ideas carries you away and your mood becomes agitated, conscious breathing becomes the bridge that brings you back to the present and the key that unlocks the door to true rest. Imagine for a moment that you are observing your own breathing as if you were a gentle witness. You don't seek to change it. You simply notice how the air enters your nose, how your abdomen expands, how your chest rises, how your exhalation releases the rhythm and tensions of the day. In this simple act of observing, the mind quiets. It no longer flees to the past or leaps into the future. It immerses itself in the heartbeat of each inhalation and exhalation and discovers that there, in this space of exchange, lies an oasis of calm. Over time, you'll notice that your breathing changes according to your inner state. If you're tense, your inhalation will be short, almost shallow. Your exhalation will be too rapid. If you're feeling nervous, you might unconsciously hold your breath, as if you were holding your anxiety in your chest. But if you allow yourself to gently lengthen each exhalation, you activate a restorative effect. Your nervous system relaxes, and you open yourself to stillness. It's as if, with each slow, deep breath, you're laying the groundwork for serenity to flourish. Before sleeping, this openness becomes essential. When you lie down, close your eyes and bring your attention to your breathing, without judgment, without expectation. Allow yourself to feel every nuance, the freshness of the air as it enters, the warmth as it leaves, the slight pause before the next cycle. If you notice your mind wandering, return, without reproach, to the flow of your breath. With each return, you strengthen an inner muscle, the ability to anchor yourself in the now. You may want to accompany that attention with a gentle rhythm. Feel yourself inhaling for 5 counts and exhaling for 8. You may find that a slow count helps you stay present. Or perhaps, spontaneous breathing is enough. The important thing is not the technique, but the attitude. a loving curiosity about your own inner life. Instead of forcing the breath, observe it. Instead of controlling it, welcome it. As your breath becomes your anchor, you'll notice your body respond. Your shoulders drop, your jaw relaxes, your pelvis sinks into the mattress. With each exhalation, the knots of accumulated tension dissolve. And over time, you'll be amazed that without realizing it, your mind stops sinking into the river of thoughts and opens to the deeper current of your breath. In ancient Buddhist teachings, it was said that breathing is the master key that unlocks the door to liberation. This was not an empty symbol, but an empirical truth. Whoever masters their breathing calms their mind. Whoever calms their mind gains access to inner silence. Thus, in silence, breathing becomes a greater teacher. Each inhalation reminds you that you are alive. Each exhalation reminds you that life is impermanent and that in this constant flow, your consciousness can find rest. At first, the practice may feel strange. You may feel stiffness in your torso or discover disturbing thoughts that emerge strongly. Don't be alarmed or interpret these reactions as failure. Rather, see them as warnings. Your mind is telling you that paying attention to your breath touches deep chords. Only with patience and perseverance will you accept this crossing of mental waves and breathe through the swell without sinking into it. One night, a novice monk sat down to practice before going to sleep. After a few minutes, he collapsed. When he awoke, the master asked him if he had noticed anything special. The disciple confessed that at first, his mind screamed stories of fear and guilt. But then, he had fallen asleep, and when he woke up, he felt a strange lightness in his chest. The master smiled and said, "It wasn't sleep that freed you, but the breathing that accompanied you until dawn." This simple anecdote reveals that practice is not without visible results. Even when sleep seems to interrupt it, transformation takes place in silence. To deepen this connection between breath and presence, it's helpful to cultivate informal moments in your daily life. Every time you pause, before answering the phone, getting off the bus, washing your hands, take a mini retreat in your body. Briefly close your eyes, connect with 3 conscious breaths, and then continue. These moments, imperceptible at first, break up the compulsive impulse to think incessantly and strengthen your ability to ground yourself in the moment. Even when walking, you can integrate your breathing. Slowly synchronize one step with your inhalation and the other with your exhalation. Thus, each stride reminds you that you are here and now, that there is nothing more urgent than that heartbeat between foot and foot, air and air. With practice, you will discover that the world takes on a different color. Everyday noises cease to be background music for your mental story and become secondary musicians accompanying your breathing dance. In the Zen tradition, a master asked his students, "Which is faster, thought or breath?" Most of them answered without hesitation, "Thought, master." The master replied, "If you observe your entire breath, you will discover that it is longer than any thought, for thought cannot wait. Breath, on the other hand, is humble and patient. This humility of breath is its greatest virtue. It does not compete with the mind, but rather gently opens it. When you practice before bed, mindful breathing becomes a kind of balm. In the stillness of bed, the mind no longer has external stimuli to fuel its discourse, but the temptation to think persists. So whenever you find yourself immersed in thoughts, return to your breath, as if following the trail of a wisp of incense. Inhale and mentally say "here." Exhale and say "now." This small verbal anchor reinforces your awareness without adding mental burden and guides you into the silent space that exists between one inhalation and the next. At first, you may find it difficult to remain with just the breath for so long. The mind will seek stimulation. It will escape. It will become entangled in worries. Whenever you notice this tendency, approach it with tenderness. "Good. There you are. Now I'll come back to you." That act of returning again and again is the essence of the practice. It is not perfection, but fidelity to the breath that opens the door to calm. You may wonder if you need to adopt a special position or use a mantra to reinforce the practice. The master's answer is simple: no. Conscious breathing requires no embellishments or complex rituals. Your presence is enough. You can practice it sitting, standing, lying down, or walking. What matters is being willing to observe the breath without judging or altering it. That gentle attention is, in itself, the entire ritual. After a few weeks, you'll notice a subtle but profound change. The mind that once raced tirelessly now obeys the call of your breath. In the midst of a hectic day, a conscious breath will be bent to interrupt the rush of thoughts and rediscover the serenity dormant within. And when night falls, your breathing will invite you to rest without haste, to shed your reserves of anxiety, and surrender to the silence that flows like a lazy river beneath your eyelids. This bridge, conscious breathing, not only nourishes you with calm, but also leads you to a state of mindfulness that transcends sleep. You sleep not to escape the day, but to reconnect with the source of your presence. You sleep not from exhaustion, but from a clarity cultivated by the rhythm of each inhalation and exhalation. And when you awaken, you are no longer a barefoot soul collecting the fragments of a scattered mind, but a whole being who has inhabited the moment, even while sleeping. Allow yourself then to surrender your rest each night to the thread of breathing. Observe how the first inhalation lights the way, how the exhalation dissolves the remnants of wakefulness, and how between the two emerges a silence so profound it can only be felt. Because beyond words, beyond techniques and stories, conscious breathing is the direct experience of your own life, an invisible bridge that leads you from mental noise to the essential peace that lies at the heart of the present moment. Chapter 7. Observing thoughts, clouds in the sky of the mind. In the early hours of the morning, when the world is still asleep and the air retains a taste of pristine peace, the perfect opportunity arises to contemplate the mind without clinging to any content. Imagine that your awareness is a wide, clear sky. Each thought that arises in it is like a passing cloud, shaped by subtle winds, destined to dissolve into the immensity of inner space. This seemingly simple metaphor encapsulates the essence of the practice. It's not about eliminating the clouds, but about reminding ourselves that the sky remains unchanged, even though the shape and size of the clouds constantly change. As we rest in bed and direct our attention to the flow of our mind, fragments of previous dialogues, images from days gone by, anticipations of tomorrow may appear. Each of these mental contents strongly attracts our identification and draws us into its narrative. However, by adopting the perspective of the sky, we exercise the ability to distinguish between the primordial observer and the observed content. Experience reveals that the very act of recognizing a thought introduces distance. The moment you notice "I'm thinking about," an intermediate space emerges, a gap in which you are no longer a prisoner of the mental plot. In ancient Buddhist tradition, this ability is referred to as seeing the mind observing itself. It's an act that requires no special skill, but rather an innocent curiosity, approaching the mind with the eyes of a child, without the urgency to understand or fix anything. Simply witness what happens. With continued practice, this witnessing attitude becomes entrenched. When the mind begins to weave stories of worry, guilt, or desire, you can discern the texture of those mental clouds without getting caught up in them. You notice their shape, their density, the direction they travel, and how they dissipate. Over time, such receptive observation becomes a source of liberation, not because the thoughts stop appearing. That expectation only creates frustration, but because you no longer have to act on them. You can contemplate them from a distance. Sometimes the thought presents itself violently, like a stormy cloud, other times gently, like a light veil. In both cases, the practice invites you to welcome the experience, allowing the storm to burn itself out and the more ethereal veil to fade away without resistance. As night falls and the body relaxes, the skill of observation becomes essential for interrupting the cycle of overthinking that often continues into waking life. Every time a thought intrudes insistently, perhaps a disturbing memory or the anticipation of a future conversation, you can mentally acknowledge it. There is the cloud of worry. That simple phrase, spoken with inner gentleness, introduces enough space so that you don't automatically identify with the content. You are not the cloud. You are the sky that welcomes it. Sometimes when you photograph the mind from this perspective, you discover repetitive patterns, phrases that repeat themselves, fears that resurface, obsessions that persist, as if they had a life of their own. This realization can generate surprise or even a brief unease. However, recognizing these patterns opens the door to self-compassion. You understand that the mind operates out of habit and emotional programming. By contemplating the mental cloud, you not only let go of clinging, but it also awakens a deep tenderness. My poor little mind, so busy trying to figure everything out. That tenderness is a valuable ingredient. Often, discipline without kindness becomes an internal tyrant. We punish the mind for wandering, scold it for overthinking. Instead, when observation is tinged with compassion, the process becomes gentle. The cloud is welcomed as much as the calm. Both arise and dissolve without hierarchy. And in that natural equanimity, the heart opens to a new certainty. The thought cycle is not an enemy, but a natural phenomenon of mental functioning. In a very secluded valley, a master invited his disciples to sit quietly on the edge of a cliff. When a moderate wind blew, clouds would drift low to the ground and seem to spread over the meadow like a fluffy blanket. The master said, "What do you see?" One replied that he saw fog. The master replied, "That fog is the mind. What you see through it is not reality. It is a diffuse perception. But if you trust the breeze, the clouds will lift, and you will see the valley in its entirety." Thus, the practice of observing thoughts with detachment is equivalent to trusting the inner breeze that clears the mind. Little by little, integrating that breeze becomes a spontaneous act. In a moment of silence, before sleep, a simple mental gesture, like letting go of the burden of identifying each thought, can invoke that internal current. Without effort, the gaze becomes broader, less focused on detail, like when we move a magnifying glass away and discover the whole landscape. This breadth of vision, captured from the metaphor of the sky, becomes a refuge where thoughts can come and go without urgency. It's important to note that this practice isn't an escape from cognitive reality. It doesn't propose ignoring problems or invalidating emotions. On the contrary, by distancing ourselves from the mental framework, we can address it more clearly when necessary, like the pilot who steps out of the cockpit for a moment to review the map. Upon returning, he better understands the route. Thus, the distant observation of thoughts strengthens the mind's critical and practical capacity, but from a place of serenity. During nocturnal experiences, when the mind tends to tense up in search of impossible solutions, this internal witness evokes a restorative effect. Whenever I notice that thoughts begin to orbit aimlessly, like rain-laden clouds that never release, I will invite my attention to recognize this dynamic. These are clouds of worry, and without trying to violently disperse them, I let them float until they give up their shape, like cumulus clouds that dissipate when the moisture dissipates. Often, the observation of thoughts is accompanied by awareness of breathing, that bridge we explored in the previous chapter. Breathing becomes a guide to avoid getting lost in the mental cloud. As we inhale, we feel the flow of silent energy that is independent of the mind's plot. As we exhale, we release the impulse to cling. This synergy between breath and inner witness reinforces the habit of non-identification and facilitates entering sleep without interruptions from internal dialogue. There are nights when the mental flow is filled with primitive fears. Images of loss, failure, loneliness. Faced with these dark clouds, the natural reaction is to flee from them, or repress them. But Bacchus invites us to make room for them. By observing the cloud of anxiety, we can recognize the emotion it carries, the quickening pulse, the lump in the throat, the urgency to resolve. By welcoming it without judgment, we begin to release the accumulated energy. The cloud becomes lighter and eventually dissolves without needing to fight it. This process of opening ourselves to mental clouds leads to a global commitment to inner nonviolence. Instead of warring against thoughts, we practice acceptance. Every difficult thought receives the same courtesy as calm. With this gentle attitude, the mind learns a new language, that of rest. We learn that, even in the midst of inner turmoil, there exists an unbreakable space of presence that contains everything without tearing itself apart. In everyday life, this inner sky appears in unexpected moments. A distant sound, a flash of light, the touch of skin against the sheet can become triggers to recognize the underlying immensity. Perhaps when you feel your heartbeat before sleeping, you notice the vastness surrounding each beat. The spontaneous recognition reinforces the practice. It is no longer necessary to sit in meditation to experience the separation between the sky and the clouds. A conscious blink is enough to remind you of the ever-available vastness. Over time, the discipline of observing thoughts without identifying with them extends beyond the bed. In the middle of a meeting, when an unwanted idea persistently surfaces, a moment of witnessing it is enough to avoid being trapped. In a social gathering, when the mind gets lost in comparisons, that internal recognition of "that's just a cloud" helps anchor presence in the real conversation. In this way, we cultivate a mental freedom that permeates us both while awake and while asleep. This chapter isn't intended to present a closed method, but rather to invite you to experience an attitude, the art of non-judgmental observation. You can approach your mind at different times: upon waking, before sleeping, during a break in the day. Each practice reverberates in the others, and the mental clouds lose cohesion in the face of the vastness of the sky of your consciousness. Allow this nocturnal exploration to merge with the continuity of the day. Observe thought patterns with tenderness and curiosity. Recognize the subtle alchemy that occurs when attention becomes a witness. And as your body drifts into sleep, let the inner sky remain awake, receiving each cloud without clinging, letting the night advance with the certainty of the unchanging calm that always accompanies you. Chapter 8. Radical Detachment. Letting go of mental ties. At the root of every moment of overthinking lies a form of attachment. The mind clings to ideas, scenarios, or identities with the same intensity as a castaway clings to a piece of driftwood in the middle of the ocean. This constant pressure generates tension and keeps the compulsive thinking circuit active. Radical detachment, far from being an exercise in painful renunciation, becomes the key that frees the mind from these bonds, allowing it to return to its natural state, a wide, flexible, and tranquil space, where the waves of the imagination can rise and fall without dragging us down. Understanding radical detachment doesn't mean condemning attachments or abandoning our responsibilities. It's not about becoming numb or disconnecting from affection for the beings and experiences we value. On the contrary, it's about discovering that our internal and external relationships flow more authentically when they're not contaminated by the urge to possess, correct, or control. Detachment is an act of trust, trusting in the impermanence of things, and at the same time trusting in our ability to relate to them without becoming exhausted. When we lie down at night, it can be helpful to imagine our mind as a garden with flowers and fruits. Thoughts and worries are butterflies and bees fluttering from flower to flower. If we try to catch them with our hand, we scare them away. But if we sit by the garden, breathe calmly, and open our hands slightly, they will come and land, explore the nectar, and depart when they wish. This gesture of non-attachment, of letting each thought appear and disappear without intervention, promotes a quality of receptivity that paves the way to sleep. In Buddhist tradition, Buddha recommended observing mental phenomena with the same equanimity with which a gardener observes the seasons. He doesn't blame spring for the falling leaves or lament the drought of summer. He simply attends to each moment, humbly adapting to what nature offers. Adopting this radical attitude of not clinging to one's own ideas is a way to cultivate self-compassion. By stopping berating the mind for thinking too much, we open a space of inner kindness that facilitates. The true challenge of radical detachment arises when we recognize that we cling not only to passing thoughts, but also to the stories we tell ourselves. I'm anxious. I'm always late. I can't switch off. These stories, endlessly repeating themselves, become self-fulfilling prophecies. Detachment invites us to disidentify from these stories. We are not our mental maps, but the consciousness that sustains them. Before going to sleep, we can pay attention to the inner voice that repeats these labels and gently acknowledge, that's just an old recording. I don't need to play it tonight. To deepen detachment, there is a powerful practice, observing desire itself. When the urge to cling to an outcome, a sense of certainty, or an ideal version of events arises, stop and observe how that desire is born in your heart and mind. Notice the tension it generates, a slight frown, a shorter breath, a jump of energy in your chest. Instead of acting on the desire, following it or repressing it, turn your attention into a gentle witness. With each inhalation, gain perspective. With each exhalation, let go of the urge to possess. Thus the desire is refracted in the light of awareness and loses its compulsive power. Imagine for a moment holding a handful of sand in your hand. The harder you squeeze, the more sand escapes through your fingers. But if you relax your hand, the sand rests effortlessly. Radical detachment mimics that relaxation. The more we let go, the more we preserve. At night, whenever you notice your mind insistently gripping a thought, a worry, or a plan, use your breath to release your hand. Inhale tenderness toward your own mind. Exhale the need for control. With this intimate gesture, we plant the seed of genuine rest. Sometimes, radical detachment reveals dark aspects of our psyche, underlying fears of abandonment, buried shame, unfulfilled dreams. Instead of running away from these shadows, detachment offers us a space to encounter them without judgment. By recognizing the presence of these uncomfortable contents, the densest clouds in our mental sky, we stop feeding them with the energy of repression. We observe their shape and texture, understand them with compassion, and then let them dissolve into the vastness of awareness. In this way, intimacy with oneself grows and the need to flee into branching thoughts diminishes. Radical detachment also extends to our expectations about our practice itself. A desire for perfection may arise. I should sleep easily. I wish not to think at all. These expectations, set as conditions for well-being, act as new shackles. Detachment reminds us not to judge the present by the standard of an ideal future. Sleep is not a goal. It is an experience that arises from allowing. Thus, aspiring not to think is as counterproductive as trying not to have a heartbeat. Instead of forcing silence, we open our ears to the mind's murmur and let it pass without interference. In practice, it can be beneficial to accompany detachment with a gentle visualization practice. Imagine a crystal clear stream flowing through a valley. Each thought is a leaf falling into the water and gliding downstream. Watch it drift away without clinging. With each exhalation, add a new leaf and observe its journey. Don't judge whether the leaf is beautiful or ugly. Just follow its path. At night, this visualization prepares the mind to contemplate the constant flow of life and free itself from the rigidity of control. A Zen master recounted that someone once asked him how to free himself from attachment. The master replied, "Let things be as they are. Don't add your will." The disciple replied, But Master, what if that involves fear, pain, or uncertainty? The Master smiled and said, that's exactly why. Let go. Fear is a guest, not the master of the house. This short story sums up the paradox of radical detachment. We let go not because things are always pleasant, but precisely because resistance to pain and uncertainty is the root of suffering. On the most difficult nights, when the mind spins scenarios of unhappiness and catastrophe, radical detachment emerges as a silent refuge. You don't deny what you feel, but rather become the space that contains that feeling without letting it drag you down. When you go to bed, take a moment to recognize the dominant emotion. Here are the anxiety, the remorse, the fear. Then remind yourself that these emotions don't define your essential being. You are the sky that welcomes them, not the storm itself. With that attitude, each thought loses its density and becomes a fleeting manifestation of consciousness. Radical detachment isn't an achievement you check off on your calendar. It's a movement you practice over and over again, every moment. At first it may feel strange. How do I let go of what feels so real? Over time, however, a silent wisdom emerges to guide us. There is no dividing line between wakefulness and sleep. Continuous surrender to the stream of consciousness. Allow sleep to come effortlessly, allowing the mind to rest in its own repose. In your daily practice, you can invoke radical detachment by noticing any form of mental urgency, the rush to solve a problem before bed, the desire to have everything under control, the expectation of a perfect tomorrow. With simplicity, bring your hand to your chest and make a gentle gesture of letting go. Feel the spaciousness that opens in this gesture. That opening transmutes into rest. The body relaxes and the mind softens, slipping into the night with confidence. The path of radical detachment is a mysterious one. It is not built by willpower, but by loving surrender to what is. Sometimes it seems like we're going backward, like we're nervously waving our hand again. In those moments, don't blame yourself. Simply repeat the invitation. May this night be free from my mental bonds. Repeat this phrase like an internal caress, and once again, observe the flow of your breath, the murmur of your thoughts, the heartbeat of your body. Little by little, the practice becomes a constant whisper that accompanies every moment and paves the way for deep sleep. Thus, radical detachment ceases to be a distant aspiration and transforms into the art of living with open hands, ready to receive without holding back, to contemplate without clinging, to rest without resistance. And in this loving practice of letting go, we discover that we always had the freedom to choose, not to overthink, not to sustain the unnecessary weight of worry. True rest arises as the natural reward of letting go of mental shackles and allowing consciousness, just as it is, to peacefully inhabit the boundless inner heaven. Chapter 9. The Art of Presence in Every Breath. As night falls and your body settles into bed, your mind nostalgically recalls the peaceful moments of the day. Perhaps you were aware of the murmur of the wind, the touch of your fingers against a warm cup, the slow rhythm of your breathing for a brief moment of pause. These flashes of mindfulness are not the merit of a special technique, nor the privilege of ancient masters. They are part of your natural inheritance. This chapter delves into the art of cultivating presence in every breath, of weaving meditation into the most mundane actions, and of bringing the light of mindfulness into the realm of wakefulness, so that each night, when you lie down, your heart is already trained to rest effortlessly. Presence isn't an achievement you accumulate. It's not a trophy to display at the end of the day. It has no score or possible comparison. Rather, it's a subtle whisper that emerges when you stop running with the stories your mind weaves and invite yourself to inhabit the moment as it is. Throughout our lives, we've been taught to plan, to remember, to project outcomes, to gauge risks and opportunities. These are useful skills, but they also engender a habit of being elsewhere that distances us from direct experience. Evening meditation, combined with daily practice, restores balance and reminds us that true refuge lies in awakened awareness. Imagine that every everyday action is an opportunity to sit and meditate. As you dress rather than rushing through it, you feel the touch of the fabric against your skin. As you arrange the sleeve of your sweater, you sense the weight of the garment and the temperature of the air through the fabric. You observe the sway of the fabric as it slides over your arm. A simple action, such as turning on a lamp, can become a ritual of presence. You flip the switch and notice the small click. You wait for the instant the bulb illuminates the room and attend to the change in hue, registering the space before and after the light. Each gesture becomes a silent ceremony, an act of embodied meditation. In the art of presence, breath remains the golden thread that weaves every experience. You don't need to sit cross-legged to find peace. Breath dwells within you all day, and each inhalation and exhalation is an invitation to return to center. As you walk, register the moment your foot touches the ground as you inhale, and the flicker of stability as you exhale. When you speak to someone, feel the air leaving your body as you pronounce each word and returning as you inhale. Between sentences, listening to your own voice in symbiosis with your breath anchors your mind to the here and now. This interweaving of presence and action has a profound impact on sleep. When you lie down, your body recognizes the patterns learned during the day. Your gestures have been thoughtful. Your steps have been conscious. Each breath has served as an anchor. The brain, freed from the urgency of processing information at high speed, prepares to release wakefulness. The heart, trained to beat with rhythmic gentleness, invites the nervous system to transition into rest mode. In this way, the art of presence in daily life paves the way to a restful night. However, cultivating this permanent presence presents challenges. The distraction of your phone, the rush to complete tasks, the inner voice that judges every moment as useful or a waste of time. To these traps, it's helpful to set small reminders that stop the autopilot. You can use environmental cues. The arrival of email, the doorbell ringing, the song changing as mindfulness triggers. Every time your phone rings, pause and take a conscious breath before answering. Every time your gaze rests on the screen, notice the tension in your shoulders and soften it with a slow breath. These micro practices don't interrupt your rhythm, but rather add quality and depth. Another valuable resource is reflection at the end of the day. Before going to bed, take a few minutes to mentally review your actions with loving attention, not to judge how well or poorly you did, but to recognize the moments of presence that arose spontaneously and be grateful for them. Perhaps you remember how, while preparing your dinner, you enjoyed the aroma of roasting vegetables, how upon hearing a voice message, you pressed the button mindfully, how while taking a walk, you paused to admire the changing sky. Celebrating these moments strengthens your motivation and reinforces the idea that practice is not confined to the meditation cushion, but is the very fabric of life. The integration of presence and rest can also be supported by simple rituals. For example, before going to sleep, place a small object, a polished stone, a dried flower, a bell, next to your bedside table. Every night as you go to bed, caress that object with your fingertips and let it remind you of your commitment to living mindfully. If your mind wanders, bring your awareness to the touch. Feel the texture, the temperature, the weight. This physical gesture brings you back to your body and therefore to your breath and inner stillness. Over the days, you'll realize that presence isn't at odds with spontaneity or creativity. On the contrary, cultivating the present moment expands your capacity to respond to the unexpected. Instead of automatically reacting to external stimuli, your mind learns to discover nuances in every situation. Traffic becomes a space to listen to your breathing and let go of impatience. Conversations acquire a deeper nuance as you respectfully attend to each pause between words. Emotions are experienced with greater clarity and compassion, because by recognizing them in your body and breath, you avoid identifying with them. This shift in perspective also changes your relationship with sleep. When night falls, you don't receive it as a forced parenthesis separating productivity from inactivity. You perceive it as the natural continuation of presence, as a different state in the same sphere of consciousness. The descent into sleep is simply another act of surrender, surrendering to the deep silence of breathing, surrendering to the repose of the body, surrendering to the grandeur of the present moment. There is no contradiction between attentive wakefulness and conscious rest. Both dynamics form a harmonious cycle. To deepen your presence, you can incorporate quick, formal practices throughout your day. For example, sit in silence for 3 minutes in front of a window. Observe the sky without judgment. Pay attention to your breathing and external sounds, and record the balance between spaces of sound and those of silence. This micro-retreat acts as a reset that revitalizes your energy and renews your anchoring in the now. Upon completion, you'll notice that accumulated tension dissipates and your mind moves more fluidly, free from the rigidity of obsessive thought. Furthermore, the art of presence is enriched when you collaborate with others. Invite a friend or family member to share a moment of conscious silence. You can walk together without speaking, listening to the crunch of leaves under their feet, the song of a bird, or the beat of your own heart. This communal practice strengthens emotional bonds and offers an experience of unity that transcends mental separation. When you return home and prepare for sleep, the memory of that shared moment resonates like a warm echo within you, facilitating surrender to rest. Another essential element of daily presence is paying attention to gratitude. It's not about listing achievements or comparing yourself with others, but rather feeling a deep appreciation for what life offers you every second. When you open your eyes in the morning, before getting up, notice the feel of the sheets, the quality of the light coming through the window, the rhythm of your breathing. Take a moment to be grateful for your ability to perceive. Throughout the day, this echo of gratitude accompanies you, colors your actions, and amplifies your connection to the present. And when night falls, this same flow of gratitude opens the doors to sleep with a feeling of fulfillment. On this journey, the challenge is not to be perfect in presence, but to tenderly acknowledge each time the mind wanders and bring it back to the moment. Each return is an act of meditation, a strengthening of the inner fiber that connects you to life. You can compare the mind to a kite rising in the wind. Sometimes it will fly high without running toward you. Sometimes it will land close by. The practice is not in steering the kite, but in holding the string with loving patience and celebrating each moment. The kite returns to your hand. Finally, when you lie down to sleep, bring with you the goal of cultivating effortless presence. Don't turn your bed into an extension of dawn. Don't schedule a to-do list or undertake a review of your to-dos. Rather, allow your senses to quiet. Feel the weight of your body against the mattress, the gentle vibration of your breathing, the distant echo of night sounds. Feel the intimacy of your skin with the sheet, the pulse of your heart and your breathing as your only rhythm. As you surrender to this minimal, profound experience, each breath is an act of absolute presence, and sleep arises as the natural consequence of that surrender. The art of presence in every breath is the bridge that unites wakefulness and rest, that integrates formal practice and everyday life, that transforms every gesture into an act of meditation and every dream into an extension of mindfulness. By inhabiting the moment with curiosity, tenderness, and gratitude, you discover that life itself is a fabric of sacred moments, and that rest is not a parenthesis, but the loving embrace with which consciousness cradles itself. Allow yourself every day and every night to inhabit this art, and you will see how overthinking gives way to the fullness of the here and now. Chapter 10. Sleep as a Teacher. Learning from the night and deep rest. When the body yields to the inescapable impulse to rest, and the eyelids fold like the wings of a butterfly, seeking repose. A subtle journey begins that we rarely stop to contemplate. The journey of dreams and the learning that lies hidden beyond the threshold of consciousness. We are not speaking here of Freudian interpretation or the usual dream symbols, but of the wisdom that emanates from the very opening to sleep, of profound surrender, of the ability to plunge into darkness without fear, of recognizing that the refuge of the night holds answers that wakefulness obscures with its constant noise. This chapter invites us to discover sleep as a silent teacher, to cultivate the attitude of an attentive apprentice who receives the messages of the night without judgment, and to integrate this knowledge to calm the overthinking that robs us of peace. The act of sleep is one of the most perfect expressions of impermanence and trust. Each night we surrender our lives completely to the unknown, to a process beyond our control and whose mental geography unfolds without maps. Yet, each dawn we return with the knowledge of having left conscious effort behind. What would happen if, instead of resigning ourselves to the passivity of sleep, we approached it with the same curiosity with which we explore new territory? What if we knew that, by turning our gaze inward during the night, we access levels of implicit wisdom that strengthen our serenity and dissolve the habit of restless thinking? The Buddha compared the mind and its states to a deep lake. On the surface, waves of thought stir clarity. In the depths, the water rests motionless and serene. Dreams in this simile are like invisible currents that circulate beneath the surface, revealing shapes and colors that would otherwise escape the eye. By following this metaphor, we can learn to enter that depth gently, without swallowing everything that surfaces, without interpreting every image, but rather recognizing the presence of an internal activity that demands a different, more receptive and less analytical attention. The first step in approaching sleep as a teacher is to cultivate an attitude of loving expectation. As we lie down, we breathe gently, and instead of pushing sleep away with tiredness, we invite it in with the intention of learning. Tonight, allow me to explore the wisdom that emerges when my mind stops chasing its own narratives. That phrase, spoken mentally with tenderness, marks a substantial shift. We are no longer mere passive spectators, but active learners who recognize the value of the night's experience. With that internal gesture, we open the door to a subtle dialogue with our own rest. Sleep unfolds in phases that the inner eye perceives as different shades of consciousness. There is the initial stage, in which breath still beats somewhat slowly, and the door to thoughts has not completely closed. Then comes deep sleep, where breathing becomes long, and the waves of mental activity slow down. Then vivid dreams emerge, those dreamscapes that, if we welcome them slowly, reveal unexpected connections between desires, fears, and aspiration. There may be rapid eye movement, REM sleep, and occasionally bursts of emotion that awaken the body with a mild start. Learning from each of these stages requires the waking mind to shed judgment, not chasing the literal meaning of each dream, but perceiving the overall sensation of the experience, the way the heart beats as it crosses the border of consciousness. To fine-tune nighttime listening, it's helpful to keep a dream journal, a notebook, and a pen by your bed. The next morning, as the outline of your dream images fade, it's helpful to indulge in the tenderness of memory, uncensored notes of traces, colors, emotions, and sensations that linger. We're not seeking to construct complex theories, but simply to capture the internal resonance each dream has left behind. This written memory becomes a mirror that reflects how the mind moves when it doesn't seek to solve problems with logic, but rather when it unleashes its imagination into uncharted territory. Over time, we'll learn to recognize recurring patterns. We'll discover that certain emotions slumber at night and awaken during the day, disguised as obsessive thoughts. This correspondence is a bridge that enriches our understanding of internally dispersed experience. However, the practice of dream journaling does not pursue exhaustiveness, but rather gentle awareness. If one morning The dream fog dissipates without a trace. There is no need to lament or judge the lack of memory. The same acceptance we apply to the flow of thoughts. This too shall pass. I don't need to hold on is used when addressing the memory void. Sometimes deep sleep imposes itself so intensely that it sweeps away all narrative and leaves the ground in absolute silence. This silence is not failure. It is the manifestation of complete rest and of a master who teaches without saying a word. Beyond dreams themselves, the body provides lessons through its waking state. The softness or stiffness of the joints, the internal vibration of the pulse, the sensation of density or lightness in the head, the relationship between breathing and the environment, all of these record the result of having listened or not to the night's teachings. Upon waking up, it is valuable to lie down for a moment, closing our eyes and shifting our attention to each part of the body. In this somatic inquiry, traces of the night emerge. Perhaps a point of tension in the shoulder recalls a dream of uncertainty. A gentle warmth in the belly indicates that the heart has found rest after releasing a recurring pain. This body practice is not a technical report, but an intimate conversation that dignifies the silent wisdom of rest. The relationship with the master dream is strengthened when we establish a conscious farewell routine at the end of the day. It's not enough to simply turn off the lights. It's advisable to create a brief ritual that marks the transition from wakefulness to the revelatory night. This might involve lighting a candle, internally reciting a short phrase of gratitude for what we've learned, touching an object that symbolizes trust, a smooth stone, a polished piece of wood, with our fingertips, or simply placing our hand over our heart and breathing slowly before settling in. This ritualistic trigger prepares the mind for an expectant attitude and connects day and night in a single thread of presence. It's also helpful to minimize technological stimuli before sleep. The blue light from screens and the torrent of information distract the mind and silence the inner teacher. If it's not possible to completely abandon them, we can at least lower the internal volume. Before sleeping, read a short piece of poetry, listen to the soft sound of chimes, or mentally chant an opening mantra. Whatever the resource, it should be attuned to the intention of inhabiting the night as a place of learning, not as a place of escape. When the mind becomes accustomed to seeing sleep as a teacher, overthinking loses its dominant influence. The worries that once churned furiously when one lays one's head down now flow gently onto the page of one's inner diary. The power of the obsessive mind dissipates in the face of the certainty that night is not an empty parenthesis, but a space full of lessons. This confidence is recreated each morning as we discover that deep rest renews the clarity of the day, that wakefulness is restored with the energy of restful awareness, and that thoughts, now nourished by the wisdom of the night, become less compulsive. Over time, we can venture beyond the simple passive reception of dreams and experiment with lucid entry practices, subtle attention techniques that allow us to recognize the dream state as it happens. It isn't necessary to practice this every night, nor does it have to be an unattainable goal. It's enough to accept a few moments of dream lucidity as an unexpected gift. By recognizing, in the midst of sleep, that we are dreaming, the mind awakens a little more within the dream itself, generating an inner glow that illuminates images and sensations with greater clarity. This spark of awareness within the dream strengthens the perception that the inner master is always awake, even when the body rests. However, not everyone will be interested in dream lucidity. The true core of this teaching lies in attitude, the willingness to open one's heart to the night, to listen without seeking explanations or immediate solutions. Trust the process of rest as an act of wisdom. Sleep ceases to be solely a biological restorative and becomes a space for co-creation. You and your unconscious navigate together, contributing to the same conversation of symbolic fragments, images, and emotions that, when we accept them with tenderness, are transformed into seeds of serenity. In some Buddhist traditions, Conscious sleep is practiced under the name dream yoga. It consists of gradually bringing the waking mind into the dream state, sustaining attention without rigidity and without succumbing to distraction. In its gentlest form, before falling asleep, one lies down with clear vision, calm breathing, and a willingness to remain attentive to the boundary between here and there. The goal is not to force lucidity. It's about lovingly acknowledging each transition, the moment the eyelids close, the instant thoughts falter, the point at which breathing gives way to dreamlike images. This practice hones inner sensitivity and over time reveals to us that sleep is not a blind spot, but a territory strewn with mishaps and revelations that complete the circle of mindfulness. The teachings of the Master Dream can also be translated into words of gratitude. Each morning, instead of rushing out of bed, we can take a moment to bless the night that has passed. Thank you for your silence. Thank you for the formless lessons. Thank you for teaching me that, even in darkness, consciousness never strays. This blessing is not a religious act, but rather a recognition of our capacity to learn from everything that happens, even from that which escapes daytime logic. Sleep, in its quiet wisdom, reminds us that the mind is not merely a cogwheel of productive thoughts, but an ocean of experience that transcends linear time. In this nocturnal space-time, fears and desires interweave without hierarchy, revealing connections unknown to reason. By accepting sleep as a teacher, we understand that the suffering that fuels overthinking is not an enemy to be defeated, but an invitation to release the reins of will and embrace the greater flow of existence. Thus, each night, when we lay our head on the pillow, we not only rest our bodies, we also rest the need to understand, to resolve, to control. We open a portal to direct experience, where every slow breath, every heartbeat, and every fleeting image teaches us that true serenity is not found in the dominion of the mind, but in the conscious surrender to the inner wisdom that sleep silently shares. And in that liberating surrender, the chains of overthinking dissolve like an echo in the void, leaving in their place the clarity of a restful dawn. Chapter 11. The Rebirth of Consciousness. Awakening to the new day. When the first light of dawn peeks behind the curtains, and a faint thread of light pierces the dimness of the room, a new act begins in the eternal drama of consciousness. The rebirth of a new day. It's not simply a matter of opening the eyes and changing position, but of honoring that unique moment when the mind emerges from the gentle lethargy of sleep. At that threshold, in that tiny space between deep sleep and active wakefulness, lies the seed of a morning practice that can transform any day into an offering of presence, attention, and wisdom. Today's chapter delves into the art of consciously awakening, of prolonging into the morning the quality of silence and clarity cultivated during the night, and of weaving each gesture, each initial thought, with the intention of nurturing a full and serene day. Feeling the weight of your body against the bed? Wait a moment before moving. Breathe gently and perceive the echo of the night in every cell. That pause, however brief, acts as a seal that distinguishes a mechanical awakening from a conscious one. If the sheets brush your skin, notice their texture. If your cheek touches the pillow, observe the temperature and softness of the fabric. As you inhale, feel a prolonged breath sweep through your body. As you exhale, slowly release the traces of sleep. With each rhythmic heartbeat and each wave of breath, the mind unhurriedly stretches, building a gentle bridge between the dreams you have just abandoned and the day you long to live fully. It's common, however, to get caught up in the urgency of the first tasks, answering a text, checking our phone, getting up immediately. In that initial rush, we miss the opportunity to reconnect with our center and offer the day the best version of our attention. Therefore, before rising, dedicate a few moments to a ritual of silent gratitude. It can consist of a simple internal phrase: "Thank you for this new dawn. Thank you for the breath of life it grants me." This subtle mental offering doesn't require additional time, only an honest surrender. With it, you send your mind the signal that the day doesn't begin with the to-do list, but with reverence for your own existence. When you finally sit up, do so slowly, maintaining the connection between mental presence and bodily action. If you sit on the edge of the bed, feel how your muscles respond to the change in posture. Allow your feet to rest on the floor, acknowledging their contact with the room and the firm support that sustains you. Before taking the first step, pause again and inhale with awareness. Fill your abdomen with air like a balloon opening to the inner sky, and exhale, noticing the echo in your lungs and ribcage. With each breath, your body reaffirms itself on the earth, and your mind becomes entrenched in the present. In that moment, there is no past or future, only the exact instant of your first breath of the day. Once standing, it's a good idea to extend this quality of attention when entering the bathroom or tub. When you turn on the sink faucet, wait for the water to flow and observe the metallic rattle, silvery sheen of each drop. Don't rush to wash your hands. Pause and feel the contact of the liquid against your skin. Allow the temperature, sound, and texture of the water to ground you in the present. Then, as you apply soap, notice the foamy feel, the scent, the way the foam covers your palm and glides between your fingers. Each of these details, though seemingly trivial, constitutes a micro-retreat of awareness, a moment of embodied meditation that prepares the internal ground to face the day with calm and presence. As you towel dry, pay attention to the way the fabric touches every inch of your skin. Be grateful for the softness of the fabric, the warmth that returns to your body, and the feeling of wholeness those morning caresses awaken. This hygiene ritual is not a mere formality. It's the first tangible demonstration that your body and mind function as an indissoluble unit. When you recognize that every act of cleansing is also an act of inner care, the line between physical maintenance and the cultivation of mindfulness blurs, and daily life itself becomes a continuum of mindful practices. As you approach the mirror, avoid falling into a critical gaze or comparison. Observe your face with the same compassion you cultivated toward others in previous chapters. Notice the light in your eyes, the contours of your expression, the signs of rest or tension that remain upon awakening. By looking at yourself without judgment, simply registering, you reinforce kindness toward yourself and nurture a benevolent internal dialogue. Sometimes resistance may arise. You may discover dark circles, wrinkles, or signs of sleep deprivation. If this happens, breathe calmly and remember that these marks are witnesses to your humanity, not flaws to be urgently corrected. By accepting them, you confirm that the new day begins with acceptance of all that you are, just as you are. The next step is often breakfast. Instead of rushing into the first meal, embrace the simplicity of mindful eating. If you have a cup of tea or coffee, notice how the hot liquid steams as it flows down the bowl. Bring the rim of the cup to your lips with mindful awareness, feeling the warmth, the aroma, the flavor as it unfolds in your mouth and slides down your throat. Each sip can become a meditative act, a bridge between the energy of the food and your inner energy. If you accompany your drink with a piece of fruit or toast, chew slowly, registering each texture, each nuance of flavor. Allow the nutritional energy to be felt in your body, and thank nature for its sustenance. With this attitude, you connect with the present moment and the world around you, recognizing that life awakens not only in the mind but also in the senses. While you're practicing this mindful breakfast, your mind may try to distract you with thoughts about the day's agenda, to-dos, appointments, emails. Every time you notice this tendency, patiently return to the fate of your food, the gesture of chewing, and the echo of your breathing. It's not a question of suppressing your daily planning, but rather postponing it until your body and mind are settled in calm. Once you're finished, take a moment to mentally review your intentions for the day. How do you want to relate to others? What qualities do you wish to cultivate in your actions? Formulate these intentions in simple words and anchor each one with a deep breath. This way, Your goals align with presence, not hate. Mindful awakening also involves preparing your workspace or the place where you'll spend your morning. If you work at a desk, notice the arrangement of your objects, your notebook, your pen, your computer. Breathe before turning on the screen. Notice the silence that precedes the electric hum of the power on. If you need to move, do so with attention to the movement of each joint, knees, ankles, hips, spine. If your commute includes a vehicle, drive with a gentle gaze, attentive to the wind, the sound of the engine, the flow of traffic, the streets, ambient sounds, and the lights of dawn can become part of your morning practice when you perceive them with mindfulness. By mid-morning, you may feel the need to return to your original meditative thread. Instead of waiting for the buildup of stress to force you to do so, create a voluntary anchor. Stop for a moment, close your eyes, and breathe slowly. Trace in your mind the image of the first light that entered through the window upon waking. Reconnect with the sense of newness and possibility that each sunrise awakens. This morning micro-retreat, even if it lasts only a minute, reinforces the continuity of the practice and prevents the morning from becoming a whirlwind of automatic reaction. The art of conscious awakening is not at odds with flexibility. There will be days of hectic pace, unexpected events, and changes in plans. In these circumstances, don't lose sight of the fact that your internal attitude can make all the difference. If a setback forces you to accelerate, at least maintain the intention of resuming presence in the next step. It may be in the act of fastening a button, in the gesture of brushing your teeth, or in the pause between sending a text message. The quality of attention you bring to each fragment will determine the overall feeling of the day. At midday, when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky and your energy may be lacking, it's a good idea to reconnect with your breath and your body. A brief, conscious stretch, a mindful walk, or a few moments of observing your surroundings are enough to recharge your mind. Observe the rhythm of your pulse, the sway of your shoulders, and the flow of your breath. Allow each cell to benefit from the pause and for the continuity of your awareness to be sustained. In doing so, you honor your morning commitment to presence and cultivate a day that is consistent with itself. When your schedule demands attention and your head begins to fill with racing thoughts, remember the initial act of awakening, silent contemplation before opening your eyes. This internal memory can be evoked with a single deep breath, returning your mind to the channel of awareness. You don't need to go back to bed to reawaken your awareness. Simply imagine the freshness of the morning and feel the warmth of the air entering your lungs. This morning memory acts as a beacon that directs your energy towards serenity, regardless of external circumstances. Throughout the day, the tools you've cultivated, conscious breathing, awareness of sensations, and the attitude of a gentle witness, combine to sustain a presence capable of transforming every interaction and every task into an opportunity for meditation. When talking on the phone, feel the air leaving your body as you speak. When reviewing a report, notice the texture of the paper or the weight of the tablet. When conversing with a colleague, listen not only to what they say, but to the silence between sentences and the nuance of their breathing. With every detail, you enrich your relationship with the world and reinforce the continuity of the practice that began with the first breath of the day. As a way to close out this daily rebirth, upon returning home or finishing your workday, take a moment for one last conscious pause before dinner. This interlude can be an invitation to reflect on the coherence between morning and evening. How does your energy flow? Where has your mind been most of the day? Which moments have brought you closer to the present and which have distanced you from it? Observe without judgment, simply acknowledging and being grateful for each moment you experience. At night, when you return to bed to experience the master dream of the previous chapter, you will realize that the process of conscious awakening and the process of conscious sleep are two sides of the same coin. Both require an attitude of openness, surrender, and loving presence. Just as the first breath of the day marks the threshold between night and wakefulness, the last breath before sleep signals the reverse passage, the return to inner silence. Cultivating these two thresholds with attention is like weaving a bridge that connects daytime clarity with nighttime wisdom, a virtuous cycle that nourishes well-being and dissolves the compulsion to overthink. May each dawn be a reminder that awakened consciousness is not a distant goal, but a daily act. May each inhalation upon rising be an offering of presence. May each exhalation be a promise not to drag down by mental stories. And may you, when you lie down again, feel the echo of the first breath of morning illuminating the darkness of sleep, so that each cycle of wakefulness and rest may be a continuous learning process, a perpetual rebirth of consciousness in its intimate dance with life. Chapter 11. The Rebirth of Consciousness. Awakening to the New Day. When the first light of dawn peeks behind the curtains, and a faint thread of light pierces the dimness of the room, a new act begins in the eternal drama of consciousness. The rebirth of a new day. It's not simply a matter of opening the eyes and changing position, but of honoring that unique moment when the mind emerges from the gentle lethargy of sleep. At that threshold, in that tiny space between deep sleep and active wakefulness, lies the seed of a morning practice that can transform any day into an offering of presence, attention, and wisdom. Today's chapter delves into the art of consciously awakening, of prolonging into the morning the quality of silence and clarity cultivated during the night, and of weaving each gesture, each initial thought, with the intention of nurturing a full and serene day. Feeling the weight of your body against the bed. Wait a moment before moving. Breathe gently and perceive the echo of the night in every cell. That pause, however brief, acts as a seal that distinguishes a mechanical awakening from a conscious one. If the sheets brush your skin, notice their texture. If your cheek touches the pillow, observe the temperature and softness of the fabric. As you inhale, feel a prolonged breath sweep through your body. As you exhale, slowly release the traces of sleep. With each rhythmic heartbeat and each wave of breath, the mind unhurriedly stretches, building a gentle bridge between the dreams you have just abandoned and the day you long to live fully. It's common, however, to get caught up in the urgency of the first tasks, answering a text, checking our phone, getting up immediately. In that initial rush, we miss the opportunity to reconnect with our center and offer the day the best version of our attention. Therefore, before rising, dedicate a few moments to a ritual of silent gratitude. It can consist of a simple internal phrase: "Thank you for this new dawn. Thank you for the breath of life it grants me." This subtle mental offering doesn't require additional time, only an honest surrender. With it, you send your mind the signal that the day doesn't begin with the to-do list, but with reverence for your own existence. When you finally sit up, do so slowly, maintaining the connection between mental presence and bodily action. If you sit on the edge of the bed, feel how your muscles respond to the change in posture. Allow your feet to rest on the floor, acknowledging their contact with the room and the firm support that sustains you. Before taking the first step, pause again and inhale with awareness. Fill your abdomen with air, like a balloon opening to the inner sky, and exhale, noticing the echo in your lungs and ribcage. With each breath, your body reaffirms itself on the earth, and your mind becomes entrenched in the present. In that moment, there is no past or future, only the exact instant of your first breath of the day. Once standing, it's a good idea to extend this quality of attention when entering the bathroom or tub. When you turn on the sink faucet, wait for the water to flow and observe the metallic rattle, silvery sheen of each drop. Don't rush to wash your hands. Pause and feel the contact of the liquid against your skin. Allow the temperature, sound, and texture of the water to ground you in the present. Then, as you apply soap, notice the foamy feel, the scent, the way the foam covers your palm and glides between your fingers. Each of these details, though seemingly trivial, constitutes a micro-retreat of awareness, a moment of embodied meditation that prepares the internal ground to face the day with calm and presence. As you towel dry, pay attention to the way the fabric touches every inch of your skin. Be grateful for the softness of the fabric, the warmth that returns to your body, and the feeling of wholeness those morning caresses awaken. This hygiene ritual is not a mere formality. It's the first tangible demonstration that your body and mind function as an indissoluble unit. When you recognize that every act of cleansing is also an act of inner care, the line between physical maintenance and the cultivation of mindfulness blurs, and daily life itself becomes a continuum of mindful practices. As you approach the mirror, avoid falling into a critical gaze or comparison. Observe your face with the same compassion you cultivated toward others in previous chapters. Notice the light in your eyes, the contours of your expression, signs of rest or tension that remain upon awakening. By looking at yourself without judgment, simply registering, you reinforce kindness toward yourself and nurture a benevolent internal dialogue. Sometimes resistance may arise. You may discover dark circles, wrinkles, or signs of sleep deprivation. If this happens, breathe calmly and remember that these marks are witnesses to your humanity, not flaws to be urgently corrected. By accepting them, you confirm that the new day begins with acceptance of all that you are, just as you. The next step is often breakfast. Instead of rushing into the first meal, embrace the simplicity of mindful eating. If you have a cup of tea or coffee, notice how the hot liquid steams as it flows down the bowl. Bring the rim of the cup to your lips with mindful awareness, feeling the warmth, the aroma, the flavor as it unfolds in your mouth and slides down your throat. Each sip can become a meditative act, a bridge between the energy of the food and your inner energy. If you accompany your drink with a piece of fruit or toast, chew slowly, registering each texture, each nuance of flavor. Allow the nutritional energy to be felt in your body and thank nature for its sustenance. With this attitude, you connect with the present moment and the world around you, recognizing that life awakens not only in the mind, but also in the senses. While you're practicing this mindful breakfast, your mind may try to distract you with thoughts about the day's agenda, to-dos, appointments, emails. Every time you notice this tendency, patiently return to the fate of your food, the gesture of chewing, and the echo of your breathing. It's not a question of suppressing your daily planning, but rather postponing it until your body and mind are settled and calm. Once you're finished, take a moment to mentally review your intentions for the day. How do you want to relate to others? What qualities do you wish to cultivate in your actions? Formulate these intentions in simple words and anchor each one with a deep breath. This way, your goals align with presence, not haste. Mindful awakening also involves preparing your workspace or the place where you'll spend your morning. If you work at a desk, notice the arrangement of your objects, your notebook, your pen, your computer. Breathe before turning on the screen. Notice the silence that precedes the electric hum of the power on. If you need to move, do so with attention to the movement of each joint, knees, ankles, hips, spine. If your commute includes a vehicle, drive with a gentle gaze, attentive to the wind, the sound of the engine, the flow of traffic, the streets, ambient sounds, and the lights of dawn can become part of your morning practice when you perceive them with mindfulness. By mid-morning, you may feel the need to return to your original meditative thread. Instead of waiting for the buildup of stress to force you to do so, create a voluntary anchor. Stop for a moment, close your eyes, and breathe slow. Trace in your mind the image of the first light that entered through the window upon waking. Reconnect with the sense of newness and possibility that each sunrise awakens. This morning micro-retreat, even if it lasts only a minute, reinforces the continuity of the practice and prevents the morning from becoming a whirlwind of automatic reaction. The art of conscious awakening is not at odds with flexibility. There will be days of hectic pace, unexpected events, and changes in plans. In these circumstances, don't lose sight of the fact that your internal attitude can make all the difference. If a setback forces you to accelerate, at least maintain the intention of resuming presence in the next step. It may be in the act of fastening a button, in the gesture of brushing your teeth, or in the pause between sending a text message. The quality of attention you bring to each fragment will determine the overall feeling of the day. At midday, when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky and your energy may be lacking, it's a good idea to reconnect with your breath and your body. A brief, conscious stretch, a mindful walk, or a few moments of observing your surroundings are enough to recharge your mind. Observe the rhythm of your pulse, the sway of your shoulders, and the flow of your breath. Allow each cell to benefit from the pause and for the continuity of your awareness to be sustained. In doing so, you honor your morning commitment to presence and cultivate a day that is consistent with itself. When your schedule demands attention and your head begins to fill with racing thoughts, remember the initial act of awakening, silent contemplation before opening your eyes. This internal memory can be evoked with a single deep breath, returning your mind to the channel of awareness. You don't need to go back to bed to reawaken your awareness. Simply imagine the freshness of the morning and feel the warmth of the air entering your lungs. This morning memory acts as a beacon that directs your energy towards serenity, regardless of external circumstances. Throughout the day, the tools you've cultivated, conscious breathing, awareness of sensations, and the attitude of a gentle witness, combine to sustain a presence capable of transforming every interaction and every task into an opportunity for meditation. When talking on the phone, feel the air leaving your body as you speak. When reviewing a report, notice the texture of the paper or the weight of the tablet. When conversing with a colleague, listen not only to what they say, but to the silence between sentences and the nuance of their breathing. With every detail, you enrich your relationship with the world and reinforce the continuity of the practice that began with the first breath of the day. As a way to close out this daily rebirth, upon returning home or finishing your work day, take a moment for one last conscious pause before dinner. This interlude can be an invitation to reflect on the coherence between morning and evening. How does your energy flow? Where has your mind been most of the day? Which moments have brought you closer to the present and which have distanced you from it? Observe without judgment, simply acknowledging and being grateful for each moment you experience. At night, when you return to bed to experience the master dream of the previous chapter, you will realize that the process of conscious awakening and the process of conscious sleep are two sides of the same coin. Both require an attitude of openness, surrender, and loving presence. Just as the first breath of the day marks the threshold between night and wakefulness, the last breath before sleep signals the reverse passage, the return to inner silence. Cultivating these two thresholds with attention is like weaving a bridge that connects daytime clarity with nighttime wisdom, a virtuous cycle that nourishes well-being and dissolves the compulsion to overthink. May each dawn be a reminder that awakened consciousness is not a distant goal, but a daily act. May each inhalation upon rising be an offering of presence. May each exhalation be a promise not to drag down by mental stories. And may you, when you lie down again, feel the echo of the first breath of morning illuminating the darkness of sleep, so that each cycle of wakefulness and rest may be a continuous learning process, a perpetual rebirth of consciousness in its intimate dance with life. Chapter 13. Holistic Integration. Living the path of wisdom in every breath. As we advance on this profound journey towards silence, compassion, and mindfulness, it's time to gather all the threads we've learned and weave them into a single, living fabric. Your own life. This chapter delves into the holistic integration of the Buddhist practices we explored. Mindfulness of the body, observation of thoughts, conscious breathing, radical detachment, loving compassion, inner silence, dream listening, conscious awakening, and heart awareness, and shows how to transform every moment, from the most mundane to the most solemn, into an opportunity to embody the Dharma, the transformative teaching, without requiring a separation of practice space from life space. In this interweaving of the everyday and the sacred, we find the essence of true rest, a rest that transcends sleep and settles as a deep calm in one's existence. Imagine for a moment your entire day as one continuous ceremony. There are no gates or walls between the formal 20-minute meditation and the act of washing your hands before breakfast. Both share the same inner seed, intention and loving attention. The first step toward holistic integration is to recognize that every experience potentially contains all the elements of the Buddhist path. Every bodily gesture can become a conscious scan. Every intrusive thought, raw material for detached observation. Every emotion, a field for loving compassion. And every time we return to the breath, the heartbeat or the silence between two sounds, we strengthen the fabric that unites waking and sleeping, the Dharma and practical. As you get out of bed, mentally run through the previous practices in a brief flash. Notice how your body aligns. Mindfulness of the body. Feel the breath arising. Anapanasati. Acknowledge the beat in your chest. Heart awareness. And greet the morning with gratitude. Mindful awakening. This brief internal invocation lasts only a few seconds, but it acts as a cohesive seal that connects your evening practice to the day ahead. It's not a rigid ritual. Rather, it's a gesture of dedicated attention that makes clear the direction of your day. To live mindfully, without giving in to autopilot. As the hours pass, every time you move, walking, typing, talking, remember the metaphor of the mental garden. Observe the potential weeds of obsessive thinking and apply the clarity of mindfulness, like fresh water, that thins them out, while watering the flowers of compassion and acceptance. When you feel urgency or tension, direct your breath to the areas of stiffness in the body. Breathe into them and allow them to soften. Integration of body awareness and breath. If your mind wanders to future or past scenarios, gently label them, cloud, and return to the clarity of the moment. Thought, observation, and radical detachment. Loving compassion finds its natural space in interpersonal relationships. In every interaction, a phone call, an email, a greeting on the street, breathe first and choose to respond from a place of loving kindness. Metta, not from the urgency of the ego. This attitude not only softens the exchange with others, but also reinforces your own inner peace. You expend energy not on defense or aggression, but on authentic connection. The same is true of inner silence. When you take a moment to listen to the echo of the space between sounds, you generate a haven of calm that remains dormant until the next call of external activity. As dusk approaches, revisit the space of your master dream. Give thanks for the previous night's lessons. Record the most significant impressions in your dream journal, and contemplate how these dream images intertwine with the challenges of the day that is ending. This conscious connection between sleep and wakefulness strengthens your trust in your inner wisdom, dissolves the fear of deep rest, and prepares your mind to serenely surrender to the night's process. Holistic integration also involves taking care of your surroundings. A tidy, clean space, filled with meaningful objects. A candle, a stone, a dried flower, acts as an external anchor for your internal practice. Every time your gaze rests on these elements, it will evoke the intention of mindfulness and the call to calm. It's not about accumulating rituals, but rather about lovingly choosing a few triggers that reinforce the continuity of the path. An essential element of living the Dharma with every breath is gentle reflection at the end of the day. Before going to bed, do a brief mental review. When did you act with presence and compassion? Where did you give in to overthinking or haste? Observe without judgment and jot a few lines in your journal. This reflective act transforms life's experience into a continuous learning process, where every moment, successful or challenging, contributes to inner growth. When you finally return to your bed to sleep, you will feel how the fabric of all the practices supports you. Attention to the body connects you to the comfort of the mattress. Conscious breathing modulates internal rhythm. The observation of thoughts and radical detachment free you from mental tension. Loving compassion and heart awareness envelop you in warmth. The inner silence and wisdom of sleep guide you toward surrender. The conscious awakening of last morning precedes you as a promise of coherence and holistic integration, manifest as a field of presence that transcends the division between practicing and living. In essence, integrating the Buddhist path into your daily life consists of recognizing that every moment is a sacred act of full existence. You don't need to seek out special places or create isolated spaces. The practice takes place in the hustle and bustle of everyday life, in traffic, at the office, in the kitchen, and in bed. As we consolidate this way of inhabiting reality, nighttime rest ceases to be an escape from wakefulness, and wakefulness ceases to be an escape from rest. Both dimensions merge into a continuous flow of wisdom and peace. May this chapter 13 inspire you to weave mindfulness, loving compassion, and radical detachment into every gesture, every thought, and every breath, into every heartbeat. In doing so, you will discover that the path is not a succession of isolated practices, but the vibration of your own presence, aligned with life, and that the deepest rest is born from the complete integration of Buddhist wisdom into the very fabric of your daily life. Chapter 14: Selfless Service. Cultivating generosity and interconnectedness. By closing a cycle of inner exploration and approaching the heart of the practice, a key dimension of Buddhism emerges that not only calms overthinking, but also expands the field of the mind toward others. Selfless service, ordinish beyond formal meditation, beyond inner silence and mindfulness. The act of giving without expecting anything in return becomes a bridge to the direct experience of our interconnectedness with all beings. This chapter explores how genuine service, from the smallest gesture to the most selfless giving, calms the overactive mind, nurtures compassion, and offers a profound sense of belonging that transcends inner loneliness, facilitating a truly liberating rest. Since the beginning of Buddhist teaching, generosity has been considered the first of the 6 perfections. It's not limited to the gift of material objects, but encompasses the donation of time, attention, care, patience, and presence. Each of these gifts acts as an antidote to the mind's tendency to coil in self-centered thoughts. When you give your best to the world, you stop dominating your attention with the internal clown of anxiety and constant judgment. Instead of endlessly revolving around me, my ideas, my fears, the mind opens to the fluid dance of interdependence. You can start by offering something as simple as a genuine smile to a stranger, a sincere thank you to the supermarket cashier, or a couple of minutes of attentive listening to a friend going through a difficult time. In each of these gestures, the mind turns outward, breaks the prison of self-reference, and aligns itself with a greater purpose, contributing to the alleviation of others' suffering. That gaze that shifts the focus from "what's bothering me" to "what might this person need" instantly changes the internal landscape, freeing up mental space previously occupied by obsessive self-talk. Selfless service doesn't require grand gestures. Its power lies in consistency and pure intention. Imagine choosing one dana action each day. It could be a courtesy call to a relative you haven't contacted in a while, preparing a small meal for someone in need, or the simple habit of giving up your seat for that elderly person on public transportation. Don't expect gratitude or recognition. The practice consists of giving anonymously, leaving no trace in the ego's memory. In doing so, you will learn for yourself that the mind quiets when its selfish impulse to receive attention ceases to dominate it. In the hours before rest, selfless service becomes a generous gesture toward oneself and the human fabric. Before bed, you can take a moment to write a message of gratitude to someone who has made a difference in your day, a colleague who helped you with a project, a friend who shared a word of encouragement, or even the driver who patiently drove you. The intention isn't to elicit an immediate response, but to practice sincere giving. This simple act of generating connection penetrates the mind like a drop of honey in turbulent water, softening the hyperactive impulse to deliberate endlessly and replacing it with the warmth of human connection. The practice of dana is also powerful when extended to broader causes. Volunteering, collaborating with social aid organizations, or donating resources to community education projects activates its transformative dimension. Working shoulder to shoulder with others, we vividly experience interdependence. Every action has repercussions that transcend the immediate. This awareness activates a sense of purpose and echoes of transcendence, reminding us that we are part of a larger flow of life, where individual well-being is grounded in collective well-being. In the act of giving, the body and mind resonate with a generous impulse that settles in the chest like a wider heartbeat. If you combine the gesture with mindfulness, for example, tying the shoelaces of a child in need, or carrying boxes of groceries with a fellow volunteer, you will feel your body synchronize with your intention, your breath match the rhythm of giving, and your heart beat with a softer texture. This integration of mind, body, and heart deepens the experience of service, transforming each movement into an embodied meditation. By embracing selfless service as a regular practice, life begins to take on a different hue. Everyday transactions, shopping at the grocery store, exchanging emails, handling paperwork, become imbued with the potential for kindness. How can I perform this act in the kindest way possible? When can I offer a word of encouragement in the midst of a conversation? Such questions redirect attention to the quality of the act, not its pure efficiency, and reduce the mental space devoted to ruminating on concerns. Over time, the mind learns to seek opportunities for dana like one seeks fresh air, and such actions become a support for peaceful sleep. The wisdom of selfless service also offers lessons on radical detachment. Giving without expecting anything in return concretely exposes us to impermanence. The joy of others is beautiful, but we don't possess it. The gratitude we receive is fleeting and doesn't guarantee our future well-being. By practicing dana, we find that generosity doesn't deplete our inner resources, but expands them, and that the act of letting go activates a continuous flow of abundance. This understanding anchors the mind in the profound truth that nothing is permanent, and that well-being arises from sharing, not from accumulating. During the night, the echo of generous actions reverberates in your sleep. If before sleeping you tenderly review the opportunities you had to give and took advantage of them, your heart beats with gratitude and your mind quiets. If, on the other hand, you notice that you missed a kind gesture, you didn't return the call, didn't give way, didn't offer a comforting word, you can practice an act of internal reparation. Mentally imagine the gesture you didn't give. Do it with mindfulness and feel how the generous energy flows again. This exercise of dana in the imagination calms the obsessive mind that would cling to blame or reproach, replacing internal dialogue with the warmth of compassionate action. There are traditional stories that exemplify the power of selfless service. It is said that a traveling monk was passing through a village where no one would host him. The next day he returned and watered the small garden in front of the only house that had offered him water the night before, tending the flowers with such love that by evening they bloomed like never before. When the villagers saw this unexpected gesture, they felt both remorse and admiration. They understood that gratitude is not a passive feeling, but an action that blossoms with generosity. This passage reminds us that selfless service not only alleviates immediate suffering, but also awakens the best version of those who receive and observe it, creating a multiplying effect. In moments of greatest mental fatigue, when the wheel of overthinking threatens to spin unchecked again, invoking the energy of service offers a safe haven. You can imagine the simple act of offering your loving attention to a person, an animal, a plant, or even a beloved object. This expansive attitude shifts the mind from its self-reference and connects it to an act of caring that contains more life and meaning than any insistent thought. This simple visualization works like a balm that quells the inner urge to think and ignites the light of compassionate connection. Regular practice of dana creates an internal habit of openness toward others, which is also reflected in your relationship with yourself. Over time, you will learn to give yourself the same quality of compassion and attention you offer to others. A restful break, a space without demands, a gentle listening to your own needs. This selfless self-service is the foundation of lasting balance, as it prevents the foundation of self-esteem from depending on external achievements or the approval of others. Finally, as you lie down and prepare for sleep, take a few minutes to mentally review your acts of generosity from the day, the smallest and the largest, those accomplished and those imagined. Be grateful for each opportunity to serve, and recognize how these pauses of dana have softened the tension in your mind. Bring your attention to your gentle breathing and serene heartbeat, feeling the generosity extended. Today become a warm blanket enveloping your sleep. In that final stillness, you will find the deepest rest, as your mind no longer wanders in an obsessive search for solutions, but reaches out to itself as an act of service, receiving the care it has generously offered to the world. By honoring selfless service as an essential part of your practice, you will discover that the true gift is not the object or the action itself, but the inner transformation it fosters. The mind expands, the heart opens, and the feeling of loneliness dissolves into a river of interconnectedness that nourishes rest. May each gesture of dana, no matter how small or anonymous, lead you toward inner peace and help you stop the relentless noise of overthinking, granting you the priceless gift of deep, restful sleep. Chapter 15. Equanimity. The unperturbed mind in the midst of life. Equanimity emerges as the serene heart of Buddhist practice, the ability to sustain the mind with equal attention and kindness in moments of joy as in those of pain. When the mind is not swept away by the alternating waves of pleasure and aversion, it finds a center of stability that is independent of external circumstances. Cultivating this quality does not mean becoming indifferent or cold. On the contrary, it is deploying a loving presence so broad that it can welcome without fragmentation every experience that arrives, whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. In the preceding pages, we have explored the body, silence, breath, heart, and service. Now we take an essential step for all of this to crystallize into a serene and confident way of life. Equanimity, the great friend of the equanimous mind. Imagine your mind as a deep lake, whose surface waters may ripple with wind and rain, but whose depths always remain clear. When thoughts and emotions push against you strongly, joy over an achievement, anxiety in the face of a challenge, grief over a loss, those surface waters shift and change color. However, if you settle in as a patient observer, you can sense that beneath those waves lies an untouched depth, a space of awareness that knows presence without being contaminated by the content of experience. This quality of non-judgmental presence is equanimity, the ability to sustain one's center even as circumstances fluctuate. Cultivating equanimity begins with recognizing the truth of impermanence. We explored in previous chapters, all phenomena are born and die. Nothing remains eternally the same. When the mind accepts that pleasant and unpleasant states are temporary, it stops clinging to pleasure and rejecting pain. Instead of investing energy in resisting what we dislike or clamoring for what is pleasurable to last forever, we dedicate that energy to remaining attentive to the flow of experience. Thus, the mind doesn't break down when life shows its most adverse side, nor does it go blind when everything seems to be favoring. Practicing equanimity is, in a sense, an act of courage. It involves facing what we would prefer to avoid, while at the same time remaining open to what we wish to prolong. If you feel a strong emotion of anger or sadness, instead of suppressing it or allowing it to drag you down, you can hold it with conscious breathing. Feel the beat of your heart, the tension in your body, the rhythm of your breath. With each inhalation, welcome the emotion. With each exhalation, mentally repeat, "This too shall pass." You are not trying to modify the emotion, but rather to allow it space to express and dissolve on its own, in its own time. This gradual practice tempers the intensity of your reactions and awakens trust in the mind's natural ability to regain its balance. Even in the moments of greatest internal turmoil, equanimity offers us a different way out of the duality of like and dislike. Notice the sense of urgency that arises when the mind wants to immediately resolve a problem. Instead of giving in to the impulse to act impulsively, stop for a moment and breathe. Bring your attention to your chest, to the resonance of your heart. Allow your body to relax. Your shoulders drop, your jaw softens, your spine lengthens. In doing so, you create an inner space where thoughts can appear without you having to rush to follow them. From that space of calm, you can respond with greater clarity and compassion, no longer dominated by haste or caught in the loop of overthinking. Equanimity also manifests itself when we receive criticism or interpersonal conflicts. The egoic mind tends to take offense personally, quickly igniting defensiveness or resentment. In contrast, the equanimity mind recognizes the pain underlying any reproach. It is often a manifestation of fear, insecurity, or suffering in the other person. By perceiving this common root, we cultivate a more understanding response. We can listen without reacting on the first impulse, sustain our center, and respond from clarity, perhaps by expressing our own needs without hostility, perhaps simply by observing the other's difficulty with compassion. This way of relating to conflict doesn't avoid it, but rather transforms it into an opportunity for curiosity and growth. Another fundamental aspect of equanimity is revealed when facing loss. When something or someone significant disappears from our lives, the mind is plunged into mourning and a sense of injustice. Buddhism reminds us that nothing belongs to us forever. Everything is offered and taken by the great cycle of life. Accepting the transience of ties and external forms doesn't mean becoming insensitive, but rather honoring the value of the transitory. We can grieve, suffer, miss, and yet remain aware that the love and affection we experienced live on in the memory of our hearts. This mixture of grief and gratitude, sustained without collapsing or becoming exalted, is the most mature expression of equanimity, a loving accompaniment to one's own pain, with the certainty that everything will pass, giving way to new experience. To integrate equanimity into your daily life, it's valuable to accompany each moment with brief conscious reminders. When you wake up, as you take your first inhalation and exhalation, mentally repeat, "May everything that comes be received with equanimity." During the morning, every time you feel an intense emotion, a surge of joy, a pang of restlessness, stop for a moment and repeat this phrase, "May my mind not cling or resist, and find balance in the flow." With consistent practice, this invocation becomes an internal habit that prepares the mind to avoid reacting impulsively or collapsing in the face of the unexpected. In moments of transition, a change of task, a commute, the transition from wakefulness to sleep, equanimity finds fertile ground. For example, at the end of a workday, take a few minutes to observe the sensations in your body. Feel the fatigue in your muscles, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the swaying of your breathing. Let these sensations speak to you about the past day without judgment. This way, you don't carry stress or judgments into your restful space. Similarly, before sleeping, tenderly review your inner self. Acknowledge what worked well and what was challenging. Without blame, allow your mind to focus on what needs attention, and then release it with the same healing phrase, "All this too shall pass." The practice of equanimity deepens when we combine it with loving kindness. It is not a cold temper, but a warm steadiness. We can maintain an unshakable mind in the face of adversity, while at the same time opening ourselves to caring for our own and others' suffering. This union of equanimity and compassion nourishes the heart and strengthens inner stability. Whenever you observe a challenge, an illness, a social conflict, a catastrophe in the world, allow your heart to be moved with love, and then let your mind expand its vision to accept the impermanence and complexity of life. In this way, equanimity is not avoidance, but a form of serene engagement with total reality. To deepen this quality, there are specific meditation exercises that help stabilize the mind. One of them involves creating a symbolic space of inner spaciousness. Imagine before you a wide sky, in which light clouds of different colors, some luminous, others denser, pass by. Each cloud represents an emotion or a thought. Your role is not to chase the clouds or push them away, but to remain like the sky itself, immutable and serene. Mentally repeat the phrase, "I am the sky, thoughts and emotions are the clouds," and sustain that vision with calm breathing. Over time, this image becomes an internal anchor that triggers equanimity in real-life situations, without needing to mentally recall the exercise. Equanimity is also supported by remembering the bonds of interdependence. In a moment of frustration or discouragement, briefly reflect on the countless conditions that sustain your existence. The air you breathe, the water that hydrates your body, the food that nourishes your cells, the efforts of so many people who make your well-being possible. By recognizing this web of interconnectedness, your mind is relieved of the burden of self-obsession and opens to gratitude. This gratitude, tempered by impermanence, nurtures a warm equanimity, for it reminds you that you are not an isolated island, but part of a vast, breathing, flowing web of light. In intensive practice, such as an overnight meditation retreat or an extended period of silence, equanimity is challenged and developed more rapidly. By remaining for a long time without external stimuli, the mind focuses first on bodily sensations, then on the cycles of breathing, on thoughts arising and passing away, and finally on the pure space of awareness. This progression leads to a state of deep equanimity, where one recognizes that each level of experience is equally empty and pulsating, and that none of them evokes a compelling identification. This experience, although transitory, leaves a lasting imprint that informs daily practice. Finally, as you lie down to sleep, it's time to seal the work of equanimity with gratitude and surrender. Internally, go through your day and visualize the waves of emotion that swept through your mind. Observe how you were able to sustain them without collapsing or clinging. Thank your own consciousness for having exercised equanimity today, and offer this fruit to the night. May my sleep be deep and restful. May my mind find rest in the same equanimity I have cultivated. With that intention, sleep itself becomes a process of inner stabilization, where the imperturbable mind rests in its own impartiality, free from the need to resolve or project. Upon awakening, that equanimity, anchored in rest, will expand once again into life, closing the cycle of practice and existence. And so, the week, the month, and the years will be woven together with the threads of the imperturbable mind, time and again, to sustain us serenely in the face of the relentless passage of time. Equanimity, then, ceases to be a remote goal and becomes the daily breath of a heart that beats calmly, with nothing external able to destroy its essential peace. Final chapter: the dance of consciousness, weaving life with wisdom. At the end of this inner journey, at the end of each practice and each learning process, the inevitable question arises: how to live from here? how to deploy this wisdom in every moment of daily existence, from the first breath to the last. This final chapter is not a rigid conclusion or a point of arrival, but rather a closing measure that invites us to integrate everything we have learned, like a fluid dance, the dance of mindfulness, of an open heart, and of selfless service, moving to the rhythm of impermanence and the silence that dwells within us. The first breath and the last breath as one flow. Each practice explored in the preceding chapters: mindfulness of the body, observing thoughts as passing clouds, conscious breathing, radical detachment, loving compassion, inner silence, dream listening, mindful awakening, heart awareness, generous service, and equanimity has a starting point and an ending point. However, the true master of this path is the breath itself. When we recognize that our first breath in the morning shares the same life-giving energy as the breath that accompanies us in our final exhalation at night, we discover that there is no separation between waking and sleeping, between formal practice and daily life. The breath is the golden thread that binds each practice, the purple cord to which moments of pause, reflection, and action adhere. This continuous breath invites us to dance with each experience. We feel the air entering, and by allowing it to flow effortlessly, we create a welcoming space for whatever arises. We no longer need to fight thoughts or cling to emotions. Breathing reminds us that everything flows, everything changes, and that in this dance of change lies our freedom. Everyday awareness as an extension of meditation. One of the greatest challenges of this path is breaking the illusion that there is a practice moment separate from real life. To destroy that barrier, we can imagine that every activity, from washing dishes to writing an email, from talking to a loved one to walking down the street, is an inevitable and precious extension of meditation. Every gesture, every word, every thought can become a living manifesto of mindfulness. To do this, we simply need to bring an element of the practice into the present moment. When we hold a cup of tea, we feel the weight of the object and the warmth that expands in our hands. When we drink, we notice the taste and the touch of the liquid. When we compose a message, we pause before pressing send and consider the energy of the word. When we walk, we perceive the contact of our feet with the ground and the harmony of the body in movement. This attitude of embodied meditation transforms the everyday into an altar where we can offer our presence. Interweaving silence and words. In the Buddhist tradition, there are moments of prolonged silence, retreats, where words give way to the inner murmur of consciousness. However, life also demands expression, sharing ideas, projects, affection. The art of conscious dance consists of interweaving silence and words with the same delicacy as weaving a silk shawl. When we speak, we do so from the heart, with the right speed, compassion, and truth. When we remain silent, we do so without anguish, holding stillness as a creative space where new forms of understanding flourish. Silence is not the absence of communication, but rather profound communication. Where words fail to reach, silence speaks. The gesture of attentive listening, a compassionate gaze, a shared silence can resonate more powerfully than 1,000 speeches. Cultivating this inner silence prepares us to offer words from clarity, without becoming an instrument of the ego. Impermanence as an ally of gratitude. In the dance of existence, everything that is born dies. Everything that takes form dissolves. All apparent illumination becomes shadow. Instead of lamenting this immutable law, we can celebrate it as the great invitation to gratitude. To be grateful for every breath, every heartbeat, every smile, every bewilderment. When we understand that nothing is permanent, we learn to love life in its fragility, to savor every moment like a sip of ephemeral nectar. This impermanent gratitude translates into simple practices. Upon waking, be amazed by the miracle of being alive. Upon holding the hand of a loved one, savor its warmth. Upon contemplating the sky, marvel at its vastness. Upon experiencing pain, be grateful for the opportunity to discover inner strength. In this way, the mind dumps frantically whirling around what was and what will be, and gracefully settles on what is now, overflowing compassion towards oneself and everyone. A common thread throughout this journey has been compassion, the practice of loving kindness toward oneself and all beings. In this final chapter, we can expand that compassion beyond our immediate limits, toward distant beings, toward future generations, even toward the planet itself, sensing the suffering welling up in every corner of the world, and offering it from a distance. An intention for liberation is a powerful act of selfless service. We become co-creators of a kinder world, not through external impositions, but through the quiet power of compassionate attention. At the same time, we recognize that we also deserve that compassion, that the inner host of guilt, self-criticism, or hopelessness needs as much care as the suffering of others. Embracing our shadows with tenderness, forgiving ourselves for past mistakes, and lovingly supporting ourselves in adversity is the foundation for being able to offer authentic service to the outside world. Compassion thus becomes a bridge between us. We heal others without neglecting ourselves, and healing ourselves allows us to serve fully. Equanimity as the axis of inner harmony. In the heat of relationships, in the fluctuations of projects, in the uncertainty of times, equanimity emerges as the axis that keeps the wheel in its center. It is not a cold detachment, but a warm presence that welcomes without fragmentation the pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral. Practicing equanimity involves recognizing the diversity of experience without tearing apart the unitary fabric of the mind. It is being the imperturbable support that in the face of any phenomenon remains calm, observing and acting with the same serene clarity. This inner balance is the most valuable legacy of any practice, not because it avoids pain or crisis, but because it transforms them into opportunities for deepening compassion and wisdom. Instead of asking why me, we can ask how can I respond with attention and heart to what I am experiencing. The dream is a seed of renewal. Returning to bed each night is returning to the fertile ground of deep consciousness. In the chapter dedicated to the master dream, we learn to welcome the night as an act of wisdom, not as a parenthesis from wakefulness. In this closing, we can reaffirm that sleep is not merely a biological rest, but a passage to the implicit teaching of the unconscious mind, to its images, its symbols, its mysterious pulse. To honor sleep with gratitude, to review the dreamlike traces with curiosity, and to rest in the certainty that breath and heart continue to languish in the darkness, is to affirm that the dance of consciousness never truly ceases. While we sleep, our inner life continues its teaching, and upon awakening, we bring that learning with us into the dawn. From the first breath to the last sigh, this final chapter calls us to live as one uninterrupted breath. From the first breath at birth to the last sigh at departure. In this continuous flow, each practice unfolds like a hue of light. Mindfulness, compassion, detachment, equanimity, service, and silence are colors that paint the canvas of life. There are no isolated stages, but rather a unique symphony, walking, speaking, loving, letting go. And in that flow, the driving force of transformation is revealed. Not the techniques per se, but loving fidelity to the present experience. Each time we return to the breath, we mentally recite a promise. Here I am, awake, with my body, my mind, and my heart. That very act of returning, again and again, creates the space of freedom, where the dance of consciousness comes alive. A bridge to infinity. Although this is the final chapter of this audiobook, it does not mark the end of your practice, but rather the beginning of the true adventure, the adventure of living mindfully, with generous compassion and an undisturbed equanimity. every day and every night, until our last breath returns us to the vast silence from which we emerged. Think of this dance not as a rigid choreography, but as an improvised encounter between your inner world and the outer world, where every step, every turn, every pause brings something new, unique, and sacred. May this closure be a bridge to infinity, the certainty that awakened consciousness dwells within you, always ready to recreate itself, to reinvent itself, to dance with impermanence and with love. May each breath be a faithful companion, and may each pause in exhalation remind you of the great truth. We are breath, we are heartbeat, we are sky and clouds, we are notes in the eternal symphony of existence. Stay alert, keep dancing, and allow life, in every fold and every shadow, to be your teacher. And so this journey concludes. A loving return to your own presence. Thank you for giving every breath, every attention, every gesture of compassion to the teachings you have heard. Take with you the certainty that each conscious breath is an anchor to the now. Every practice of the body, mind, or heart is a bridge between wakefulness and sleep. Every act of generosity and equanimity is a seed of peace that blossoms beyond you. You may close your eyes now and be greeted by silence. Allow yourself to rest, knowing that awakened consciousness continues to dance in the fabric of your life. And when you awaken tomorrow, remember, your first breath and your last sigh are part of the same miracle. Thank you for listening. May each day and each night guide you toward the freedom of a serene heart and a peaceful mind.